biological civilization. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, Mist. Chu Yuntian looked at the fog outside the window, feeling very depressed. This kind of horrible weather has lasted for 3 or 4 days, and it doesn't seem to get better. It seems that I can't go out again, he said to himself, and then walked to a corner of the room. He opened a cabinet, and there was a passage at the bottom of the cabinet. He slowly crawled in, and came to a basement. This is his laboratory, and there is also a small kitchen, because he usually does some medical experiments here. He walked through the laboratory, and came to the door of a small room. There was a clang, clang clang sound of shaking the iron cage. When he walked in, there was a big iron cage inside. The cage was on a bed, and there was a disheveled woman inside, who seemed to have some mental problems. This was a patient that Chu Yuntian took from the mental hospital. The doctor repeatedly told him that this patient had a strong tendency to violence and must be restricted. Don't shake it, I'll get you some medicine. If it weren't for you being my friend's sister, I wouldn't have taken you here. After that, Chu Yuntian walked out of the room, went to the laboratory to get some drugs for treating mania, drew them into the syringe, and then slowly walked towards the room. This woman is Chu Chengwen's sister. Chu Chengwen is a gangster that Chu Yuntian met after he was fired. For some reasons, he didn't dare to let his sister live in the mental hospital, so he asked Chu Yuntian to take her over. After injecting the drug, the woman slowly calmed down. Looking at the girl with messy hair, she couldn't help but sigh. How can a pretty girl have such a bastard brother? When can you get out of the shadow of being victimized? Chu Yuntian muttered to himself, and walked out of the room. Climb out of the basement, and go to the computer, ready to see when the fog will dissipate. At least you have to know why there is such a big fog. Open the webpage, and a window pops up directly. It should be the official to stabilize people's hearts. According to authoritative experts, this kind of thick fog should be caused by the return of cold air in spring, when the season changes. According to the test data, the thick fog has no harmful components to the human body, but for your safety, please reduce travel. The announcer said very official words. After hearing what the announcer said, Chu Yuntian had the urge to curse. You said it was harmless, and asked me to reduce my travel. Are you afraid of being hit and killed when I go out? That requires cars to be on the road. Chu Yuntian muttered to himself, and closed the page. He searched for fog to see if there were any reliable posts. After searching, he saw a post titled "The End of the World." He clicked on it, and saw a large picture of Milky White sphere. It said, "My friend is from the space agency." At this time, the picture sent back by the satellite show that the entire Earth is surrounded by thick fog. Among the countless replies below, Chu Yuntian only noticed one, which was said by a netizen named Weirdo that, after sampling and analysis, the thick fog is not much different from ordinary fog, with only a small amount of unidentified matter. Chu Yuntian continued to scroll down, and saw a post called "Monster in the Mist." The post said, "I live on the 3rd floor. At noon, I heard a scream downstairs. I quickly ran to the window and saw a shocking scene. A nearly 2-meter monster in the mist was biting a middle-aged woman's neck and dragging her away. I didn't see the monster clearly. The outline was similar to a werewolf, but it was not like a werewolf. It was like a big dog that had become a spirit." The comments below cursed. Why post without a picture? Only one name was garbled and said, "I also saw a monster," and attached a very blurry picture. It seemed to be taken by the window. There was only a blurry outline, like a dog with wings, but the shape of the limbs looked like some kind of insect. After reading for 3 hours, seeing that there were not many serious posts, Chu Yuntian made some food and went to the basement. He went to the small room to see that the girl was sleeping, and then he went out. In the laboratory, he prepared some drugs for treating mania, and then he was ready to go back to his room to rest. But at this moment, his cell phone rang. He took it out, and saw that it was the girl's brother Chu Chengwen. As soon as he answered the phone, he heard an anxious voice. "Brother Chu, is my sister okay with you?" "Very safe. What happened to you?" Chu Yuntian asked helplessly. Today, I went to a village with a few brothers to collect debts. Before we got to the village, we were attacked by a huge creature. It looked like a wild dog, but it was 3 meters tall. In short, you must not come out. All my brothers were killed by the monster, Chu Yuntian said anxiously. Is there really a monster outside? What kind of monster? Are you safe now? Chu Yuntian's voice also became a little anxious. I'm hiding in a trash can now. It is relatively safe, but the big dog should still be outside, Chu Yuntian said in a low voice. Have you called the police? Otherwise, call someone over. As the saying goes, if a friend dies, I will live, and if I don't, I will live, Chu Yuntian said with a bad idea. I finished the call, but I'm afraid no one will show up. Brother Chu, if something happens to me, please help me take care of my sister. She's my last relative. Chu Yuntian had just finished saying this when there was a bang from the other end of the phone, followed by a heart-wrenching cry. What's wrong with you? Speak, Chu Yuntian shouted into the phone. Don't leave the city. There was a heart-wrenching roar from the phone, followed by the sound of 4 claws stomping on the ground, and then there was no sound. Chu Yuntian hung up the phone in shock, thinking, is there really a monster outside the city? The city should be fine, and there was no shouting outside. Besides, there are so many police in the city. Even if there is a monster, can it withstand bullets? Thinking about it, he walked towards his small room next to him. Back in the room, through a SLR mirror, looking at the pitiful girl lying on the bed, he felt helpless. I hope you get better soon. Although your bastard brother did a lot of bad things, he still knew to call to remind you in the end. He has a conscience, Chu Yuntian said to himself, and lay on the bed, thinking that he must go out to buy some food tomorrow. There is not much food at home. I don't know if the thick fog will dissipate tomorrow. I hope that those monsters will not appear in the city. Lying on the bed thinking about irrelevant things, I slowly fell asleep. Chapter 2, Shocking Change. It was already past 9 AM when he woke up. Chu Yuntian didn't sleep very well last night. He didn't know if he was dreaming or really thinking that he could hear a crunching sound, as if he was chewing something, or as if something hard was scraping against the wall. Chu Yuntian glanced at the girl next door, who was still sleeping soundly and seemed to have slept very well last night. After crawling out of the underground, he looked at the fog outside the window all day, which seemed to be dispersing. It seemed to be much lighter than the previous few days. It seems that this thick fog is about to dissipate, Chu Yuntian said to himself. He changed his clothes, went to the closet to take out the pistol that had been hidden there for a long time. This was secretly stuffed into his hand by Chu Yuntian. He checked the magazine and put it in his pocket before walking out. Although the fog had not completely dissipated, the visibility was much better than the previous few days, but the visibility was still less than 2 meters. In such weather, even if someone attacked him on the street, he would not be able to see who it was when he turned around. Chu Yuntian walked out of the house without wandering around, but went directly to the nearby small supermarket. He only met 1 or 2 people occasionally on the road. Suddenly, a scream came from a distance. Chu Yuntian stopped for a while and did not hear any other sound. He continued to walk to the small supermarket, thinking, it's better to have less trouble than more trouble. Just don't bother me. It seems that, as long as the state's control is slightly reduced, there will always be some violent element who come out to do evil. He walked to the small supermarket and saw a small group of people waiting there, but the roller shutter door of the supermarket did not mean to open. Do these people really think that the thick fog will continue, or do they think it is really the end of the world? Does the supermarket owner think so? Is it not making money? Chu Yuntian did not wait there with these people, but slowly detoured to the back door of the small supermarket from the side, because he knew where the warehouse of the small supermarket was. Because he saw the supermarket unloading several times. With such a thick fog, even if Chu Yuntian tried to empty the warehouse, no one would know, as long as he didn't make a big noise. When the fog cleared, would they really bother him because he stole some food? Besides, who would know? Even if the surveillance camera caught him, at most he could only see a shadow. When Chu Yuntian arrived at the door of the warehouse, he took out a piece of wire and poked at the roller shutter door lock for a while. It opened with a click. He learned this lock-picking skill from a thief after several weeks. Of course, if he hadn't been always thinking about these messy things and doing some inhumane experiments, he wouldn't have been expelled from school. After opening a gap, Chu Yuntian went straight into the warehouse. All he saw were some ordinary daily necessities. He only saw some instant noodles and biscuits in the corner. No wonder the supermarket owner didn't open the door. It seemed that the supermarket didn't have much stock. But surprisingly, there were several shopping carts under some of the goods. Chu Yuntian unloaded the daily necessities directly, loaded 2 boxes of instant noodles, a box of biscuits, and some milk drinks. Before leaving, he picked up a box of ham sausage and some canned food, and then secretly lifted the shutter door and walked out. For the so-called morality, he helped the supermarket owner lock the warehouse door before leaving. Listening to the noisy crowd not far away, Chu Yuntian smiled helplessly and disappeared into the alley in the thick fog. Unfortunately, just after turning a corner, he saw 2 young men coming out of the fog. One was a strong young man with a height of more than 1.8 meters, and the other was a little shorter, with a crew cut and a little bit of ruffian. The crew cut young man glanced at the things on the shopping cart with ill intentions and walked over without saying anything. After less than 2 minutes, Chu Yuntian heard footsteps behind him and stopped and looked back and saw that the 2 young men who had just walked over turned back. Seeing that Chu Yuntian actually stopped there, the 2 immediately took 2 quick steps to block in front. The crew cut young man said jokingly, "Friend, we 2 brothers want this truck of stuff. Don't say we are immoral. This money is enough to buy all these things for you." Then he took out 300 yuan from his pocket. Chu Yuntian glanced at the money in the crew cut's hand and said, "Why don't you go to the supermarket directly, if you have money?" The crew cut was a little impatient and said, "Stop talking nonsense, put down the things, take the money and leave." Chu Yuntian immediately said, "What if I don't know what's good for me?" The crew cut turned his head to look at the sturdy young man and said, "Then it's our fault for being rude." He said that and pinched his fingers. He raised his head slightly and looked at the sturdy young man, only to see that the sturdy young man took out a fruit knife from his pocket without saying a word. Chu Yuntian could only smile bitterly, quickly took out a pistol from his pocket, pointed it at the 2 men and said, "Get lost, I'm someone you can't afford to offend." The 2 men were stunned for a moment, and then the short-haired young man said, "Fuck, take the toy gun to scare who?" He was still pretending to fight, but was stopped by the sturdy young man. "Brother, I'm sorry, let's go now." After the sturdy young man finished speaking, he slowly walked into the fog with the short-haired man. After taking a look at the direction they were going, Chu Yuntian shook his head helplessly without doing anything. Although the sturdy young man said soft words, there was no fear or tension in his expression. It seemed that the 2 did not believe that the gun in his hand was real. After waiting for a while, they pushed the shopping cart towards home. "Brother Wei, do you think the pistol inside is real or fake?" the short-haired man asked in a low voice, after walking a distance. "How should I know?" the sturdy young man said lightly. "What's the matter with him? With his physique, I can knock him down with 1 punch, the short-haired man said fiercely. "That's not worth it. Think about it another way. If it's Russian roulette, you shoot yourself in the head, and if you don't die, I'll give you a few boxes of instant noodles. Would you do it?" the sturdy young man said lightly. "Of course not. Is my life worth a few boxes of instant noodles?" the crew cut said excitedly. "That's terrible. No matter whether the gun in his head is real or fake, we don't need to be serious with him. After all, it's not time yet," the sturdy young man said indifferently. "That makes sense. Hey, brother Wei, wait for me." The crew cut thought for a while and hurriedly followed. At this time, Chu Yuntian had returned home. After putting the things away, he pushed the shopping cart directly to the street and pushed it hard, saying, "It doesn't matter where it hits. Wait until the fog clears and someone sees it. As long as I'm not suspected, it's fine." After that, he returned home. I ate something casually and prepared to go to the room to bring some food to the girl. When I walked to the entrance of the room, a strong smell of blood came as soon as I opened the passage. Chapter 3, Strange Beasts. When he arrived at the room, he saw blood seeping out of the girl's room. Chu Yuntian suddenly had an ominous premonition and immediately took out his pistol and slowly walked towards the girl's room. When he got close to the door, he heard a chewing sound coming from inside. The ominous premonition became stronger. Chu Yuntian pushed the door open and was shocked by the scene inside. He saw a grey-haired rat the size of an adult wolf dog gnawing at the girl's broken body. The rat saw someone coming in and pounced directly. If it weren't for the iron cage blocking it, it would have been thrown to the ground at the first sight. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian immediately aimed at the rat's head and fired several shots. The rat with blood on its head did not retreat, but seemed to be enraged. It squeezed out of the iron cage with all its strength. The steel bars that were as thick as 2 fingers were actually opened by it through the gap and its head stuck out. However, because of this, its head was stuck between 2 steel bars and could not move forward or backward. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian threw away his pistol, ran outside to pick up the bone-cutting knife on the dissection table, and came back to cut the rat's head with a knife. Although the blood spurted out and a big hole was broken, the rat's head could not be cut off with one knife. At this time, the big rat seemed to feel the threat of death and began to retreat frantically, but because the head was still stuck in the gap, it could only pull back hard on the spot. Chu Yuntian swung the bone-cutting knife in his hand like crazy and cut more than 10 times before the rat's head was completely cut off. The big rat whose head fell off did not seem to fall to the ground as imagined. The big rat that lost the restraint of its head fell to the ground and twitched violently. The blood in its cavity was like a flood that had been opened, and the whole room was full of rat blood. Chu Yuntian, who had already hidden at the door, watched all this quietly and wondered in his heart, how did such a big rat get in? No, where could there be such a big rat? He scanned around and saw a big hole with a diameter of nearly half a meter next to the girl's body in the iron cage. Thinking of Guo Chengwen's experience and the post I saw a few days ago that said there were monsters, could it be these animals that were enlarged a lot? How did these animals suddenly become like this? Even if they grow up, they shouldn't grow so fast. After standing at the door for nearly half an hour, the headless rat inside slowly stopped. No blood was flowing out of the wound. After spraying for nearly half an hour, how much blood should have been sprayed out? This thing is really tenacious. It twitched and struggled for half an hour even without a head. Chu Yuntian said to himself. Although he said so, he was not reckless enough to go over and check the rat's corpse. Instead, he waited for dozens of minutes before slowly stepping on the blood on the ground and moving to the side of the iron cage. He reached in and cut off the rat's limbs one by one before he felt relieved and slowly opened the iron cage. He walked into the iron cage and grabbed the rat's long tail and pulled it out directly. During the pulling process, Chu Yuntian clearly felt that the rat seemed to be not dead yet, but the rat with its limbs and head cut off could not hurt himself, even if it still had a breath. Throwing the rat corpse aside, he entered the iron cage and looked at the half-meter sized deep cave. Chu Yuntian's first thought was to find a way to block it quickly, so that if 2 more rats of the same size came, even with the iron cage, they might not be able to resist. Thinking of this, Chu Yuntian immediately climbed out of the basement and went outside to carry down the 2 bags of cement left over from the last basement construction. Chu Yuntian first used a shovel to collapse the soil inside the hole, then looked at the broken body of the girl next to it, and Chu Yuntian threw it into the collapsed cave without hesitation, then mixed the cement with blood and some sand, and poured it into the cave, where the girl's body was placed, and put a few iron rods as support, before smoothing the outer layer with cement, and then said to the hole, "This time you can reunite with your brother." After walking out of the iron cage and taking a look, he was still a little worried, and then locked the iron cage again to feel relieved. After cleaning up the bloodstains and bloody sheets in the house, it was already dusk. In order to resolve the doubts in his heart, Chu Yuntian decided to dissect the rat that was about to be dissected. He put onto layers of plastic gloves, threw the rat on the dissection table, took out all the tools, but found something unusual as soon as he started. The skin of this rat was thicker than all the creatures Chu Yuntian had dissected, and its toughness was not comparable to that of ordinary creatures. He had no choice but to change to a larger knife, and then he successfully cut the fur of the rat. As soon as he opened the chest cavity, Chu Yuntian saw a shocking scene. A heart that should have stopped was still beating regularly. How is this possible? Not to mention that the head has been off for almost half a day, but the blood has been drained, and the heart is still beating. This has already deviated from the standard of a creature, Chu Yuntian said to himself, slowly cutting the surrounding blood vessels with a knife, and took out the still beating heart. Looking at the heart that was still beating, even though it had been separated from the body, he was a little uneasy. However, when he was cutting open the heart with a knife, he hit something hard. He opened the incision with his hands, and saw a blood-red thumb-sized bead. He slowly cut open the capillaries around the bead, before taking it out. The moment the bead was taken out, the heart stopped beating. Could it be that the energy that maintains the beating of this heart is this bead? Chu Yuntian said as he cut directly on the bead. He was shocked to find that the bead with a little gap was closed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although it was cut open a little, it was still blocked by a hard substance. After studying it for a while without any results, Chu Yuntian put the bead into the glass container next to it. The subsequent dissection did not find any other special places. Although it was stronger than ordinary creatures, it basically did not deviate from the standard of creatures. Until the abdominal cavity was cut open and the stomach was opened, some minced meat and some translucent substances of unknown origin flowed out with a strong smell of blood and a foul odor. In a pool of smelly flesh and blood, Chu Yuntian found another small transparent bead, which was a little smaller than the red bead, but the difference was not big. After some experiments, it was found that this small transparent bead was almost the same as the red bead, and it would automatically heal the wound, and the hard substance inside was the same as the red bead. There was nothing special that violated common sense afterwards. It was almost dawn when all this was done. Chu Yuntian placed the two beads in different glass containers. He was originally going to throw away the remaining rat meat, but after thinking about it, he threw it into the cold storage next to it where some specimens were stored. Back in the room upstairs, Chu Yuntian kept thinking about these questions. Could this be the monster that someone mentioned in the post a few days ago? Where did these things come from? Could such a big change have happened in just a few days? Originally tired after a day, he slowly closed his eyes amid these questions and slowly fell asleep. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 4, Infection. Countless strange creatures swept the entire city, and huge and strange creatures crashed into the buildings. In the sky, there were all kinds of huge birds, and the originally tiny insects became several meters long. Chu Yuntian stood on the top floor of a building, and looked at the densely packed creatures below. He was shocked. Suddenly, a flying beast several meters long, which looked like a bat, but had 4 claws, grabbed the shocked Chu Yuntian. Another bird with colorful feathers used its sharp beak to peck a big hole directly on the wings of the strange bat. With a strange and tragic cry, the strange bat took him down from hundreds of meters high. Chu Yuntian screamed when he woke up. It turned out to be a dream. Looking at the fog outside that had become much lighter, he picked up his phone and checked the time. It was already noon. Chu Yuntian, who was about to get up, suddenly felt his head suddenly dizzy, and a strong sense of dizziness came over him. After sitting on the bed for a long time, his mind slowly came to its senses. He got out of bed and got a glass of water, but just after taking 2 sips, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his head. With a snap, his hands, which were clenched instinctively due to the pain, crushed the thick glass into pieces. After a while, Chu Yuntian looked at the broken glass in his hand and said to himself, "When did I become so strong?" He waved his fist again and felt that his strength had increased a little. Chu Yuntian, who was gradually getting familiar with this kind of strength, did not think about why his strength suddenly increased. What he was most concerned about now was what happened to the big rat in the basement. He turned on the computer and wanted to search for the problem of the monster, but as soon as he opened the browser, a news report popped up by itself. He saw a man kicking a steel pipe as thick as his arm, and then he grabbed a brick with his hand and broke it directly. The sexy female reporter clapped her hands in amazement. "We have seen your ability, so when did you find out that you have such an ability? And how did you get it? Can you tell me?" The female reporter asked the man who shook the dust off his hands. "I was bitten by some bug when I went to the toilet 3 days ago. I didn't pay much attention to it at the time. The next morning, I had a severe headache. Then, when I was working, I found that I had more strength and didn't feel any pain when I was injured. The man said, "Okay, thank you, big brother. I heard that you are not the only one in your village who has this ability, right?" The reporter asked. "Yes, the first one who became powerful was Ergao at the east end of the village. He became so powerful 2 days earlier than me," the honest man said with some envy. But at this moment, a scream suddenly came from a distance. Hearing the scream, the sexy female reporter and the honest man ran towards the scream. Not far away, they saw a bald man grabbing a village woman and tearing and biting her. Seeing this, the man immediately ran over and grabbed the bald man and threw him aside. Ergao, the honest man, was shocked. Suddenly, 2 bald men ran out from the side and immediately pounced on the cameraman and the sexy female reporter. "Ah!" the female reporter screamed and immediately turned around, shook off the bald head, and ran towards the honest man. At this time, the screen was shaking and the picture was not clear. Only shouting could be heard from time to time. After a while, the video stopped shooting. Chu Yuntian turned off the video without knowing what was going on. He thought, "What is this?" He ignored it and continued to search for things about monsters. However, there were not many things about monsters, but there were many things about superpowers. There were lines of posts with names such as, "I got superpowers, we are evolving, the second day of having superpowers," etc. Could so many people become like this? Chu Yuntian thought to himself and closed all the pages. He decided to see what the regular TV station said. After all, the official ones are sometimes more reliable than those on the internet. When he opened the CCTV news network, a big headline came into his eyes: "We are facing a real crisis. It is not that humans are evolving, but that some kind of virus cells are destroying us." When I clicked on it, I saw a man in a suit talking about the virus. It has been confirmed by several experts from the CDC that it is not an evolution or superpower as people think, but a contagious virus that animals now carry. The man in the suit sorted out the documents in his hand and continued, "After being infected with this virus, your strength will increase greatly, your pain will be weakened, and the speed of wound recovery will increase. But that is only the erosion of the virus on the human body, during which there will be symptoms such as hair loss, headache, and dizziness. It has been confirmed that this virus will be transmitted through contact, blood, body fluids, etc., and will invade the brain after 3 to 5 days, and then it will completely turn people into bloodthirsty beasts and are extremely aggressive. They are obsessed with flesh and blood and have almost lost their reason, emotions, and other necessary human thinking." Chu Yuntian was shocked when he saw this. Could it be that he was also infected with this virus? As he said, he immediately took out his mobile phone and dialed the fat man's number. The fat man, named Chenming, is Chu Yuntian's only best friend and roommate in the medical school. Since the day he enrolled, the fat man admired Chu Yuntian for opening the dormitory door with wire. Later, he followed Chu Yuntian to do a lot of bad things. If Chu Yuntian hadn't taken all the blame on himself every time, it would have been easy for the fat man to graduate, let alone go to work at the CDC now. "Brother Chu, how do you have time to call me? I'm busy." The fat man answered the phone and said directly, "Fatty, let me ask you, is anyone infected by the virus?" Chu Yuntian asked anxiously. "Yes, how do you know?" "Those infected have been isolated. We are studying whether there is an antidote to suppress the virus, but I feel mysterious. Some severely infected people are no different from wild animals. They only know how to roar and scratch, but their strength is not as great as those mildly infected." The fat man said hurriedly, "What stage have you reached in the research of the antidote? How long will it take to succeed?" Chu Yuntian asked. "It's too early, there's no clue at all. These virus cells are extremely aggressive and will directly devour healthy cells in the human body and then split into virus cells until all healthy cells are replaced. They will turn into crazy beasts that are not afraid of death or injury." "Hey, why are you asking this? You're not infected too." The fat man was a little worried. "It's okay, I'm just asking." "Okay, I won't say any more. You're busy. I have something else to do," Chu Yuntian said dejectedly. After hanging up the phone, Chu Yuntian was a little annoyed. Damn it, it must be that big rat. Although it wasn't injured, it must have touched it. But even if it hasn't evolved superpowers, don't let me be infected with this thing. Sitting on the bed and thinking for a long time, suddenly an idea came to my mind. Chapter 5 Experiment. I remember that the rat was also crazy and bloodthirsty, but when Chu Yuntian was about to chop off its head, it was obviously afraid and retreated. This proved that the rat still had thoughts, at least it knew fear, and could feel pain. Then why would humans infected with that virus become completely mindless beasts? After all, humans are more advanced than rats, right? Chu Yuntian, who was sitting on the bed and thinking hard for a long time, suddenly remembered the blood-colored round bead dug out from the rat's heart and immediately picked up the phone to call the fat man. "What's wrong, Brother Chu?" the fat man asked in confusion. "Have you dissected those severely infected with the virus?" Chu Yuntian asked quickly. "Yes, except that the pain nerves almost disappeared, the skin toughness increased, and all the brain neurons were necrotic. Everything else was similar to normal people." The fat man still said with a little doubt. "Then have you ever dug open their hearts?" Chu Yuntian said. "Although we didn't dig it open, we checked it, and there was not much difference. Do you want to know? I can go and take a look now. I'm in the morgue," the fat man said, and walked to the freezing chamber on the side. "Well, hurry up fatty, I have something urgent," Chu Yuntian said anxiously. After waiting for a while, the voice of Fatty came from the receiver. "Nothing. Brother Chu, did you make a mistake?" "That's right. Okay Fatty, you are busy. I will treat you to dinner when I have time." Chu Yuntian was about to hang up the phone when he heard Fatty anxiously said, "What? What is it? What are you doing? Can you tell me? If you don't make something that can't be cleaned up, it will not be as simple as being fired. The police will arrest you." Chu Yuntian ran to the basement immediately before Fatty finished speaking. He first took a look at the room with the iron cage. Seeing that the iron cage was intact and there was nothing abnormal in the big hole, he was relieved. Then he returned to the dissection table and picked up the blood red round bead and looked at it carefully. Slowly took out the red round bead and then cut it hard with a knife. The scalpel that was originally thought to be stuck actually cut through smoothly, and the red bead was actually cut in half. Holding the two halves of the red round bead, Chu Yuntian was even more confused this time. What is this thing used for? It was actually cut open, and there was nothing else inside. But when he compared the two halves of the red bead, a magical scene happened. The red bead, that was originally cut into two halves actually slowly merged together again. Chu Yuntian was even more confused. What is the use of this? Could it be that, if you eat this thing, you can be like a big rat and still live, even if your head is almost falling off? Although Chu Yuntian didn't believe it, he decided to experiment. After leaving the house, Chu Yuntian went straight to the nearby labor market. Before he got there, he saw several people who looked like migrant workers waiting. "What kind of work do you take?" Chu Yuntian said, pushing a few migrant workers who looked honest. "We can do any kind of hard work, including carpentry, bricklaying, and welding," an older migrant worker said. "Is there anyone who can install anti-theft windows?" Chu Yuntian said. "I can. I used to work in a building materials company," a simple and honest young migrant worker said. "What's your name?" Chu Yuntian said lightly. "Call me Dazuang. It's been foggy for so many days and I haven't received any work for several days. Let me go, boss. I will definitely satisfy you." Dazuang looked at Chu Yuntian with sincerity and said, "Okay, it's you. Hey, is there anyone else at home?" Chu Yuntian said as he walked. Dazuang followed a few steps and said, "There's not much else. Only my younger brother is back home." "Why are you asking, boss?" "Nothing. Go buy some materials first, and then come home with me," Chu Yuntian said, and walked straight to the building materials mall. When they got home, it was noon. Chu Yuntian said to Dazuang, "Eat something first and then work." He went to the refrigerator and took out some canned sausages and some steamed buns and put them on the table. "Thank you, boss. I checked. These windows will be installed in about an hour or two." Dazuang said a little embarrassedly. "It's okay. I'm not in a hurry." "Hey, are you interested in making more money?" Chu Yuntian said this lightly. "Hey, boss, just tell me what you want to do. I'll do anything I can." To be honest, I haven't had any work in the past few days due to the fog, and I'm almost out of money. Dazuang said excitedly. Come and eat this. Follow me for a few days, and I'll give you 5,000 yuan when you're done. Chu Yuntian took out the red bead and said, what is this? It's not poisonous, is it? Dazuang asked embarrassedly. Don't worry, it's definitely not poisonous. At most, it can't be digested, and will be excreted. Chu Yuntian said as if nothing happened. Really? I ate this, and followed you for a few days, and you gave me 5,000? I'll make it clear first, I won't do anything illegal. Dazuang said. No, I'm also a serious person. Don't worry, I'm a student in the medical school. I just want to do a small experiment. It's the homework assigned by the teacher. Chu Yuntian said, as if he was a student. Well, I was wondering why the boss was so young, but it turns out he's still a student. Dazuang swallowed the red bead directly into his stomach. Chu Yuntian smiled and said, I'll look up some information. I'll go to work after dinner. I'll pay you for putting it in the window. Well, boss, you do your thing. I'll call you when I'm done. Dazuang chewed the thing in his mouth and said, sitting in front of the computer and looking at the news about new creatures and strange viruses, his mind was in a mess. He didn't know which one was true and which one was false. There were actually people posting that the biochemical crisis was coming. A new virus secretly developed by a scientist infected all humans and turned them into zombies. The doomsday was coming and everyone had to find shelters and stockpile food. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian felt a little dizzy and confused. What is this? Are you the only one who has seen the biochemical crisis? Have some common sense, okay? No matter how many zombies there are, they can't stop a mechanized tank regiment from crushing them. Not to mention mechanized heavy weapons. Even if a hot weapons division has enough ammunition, no matter how many zombies there are, they can't rush through. It's still a biochemical crisis, he said helplessly to himself. Just when Chu Yuntian was flipping through the web pages randomly, trying to find some useful information, suddenly, with a cry, Dazuang ran over from the window, holding his stomach and anxiously said, boss, where is your toilet? Chu Yuntian pointed to a small room next to him, and Dazuang immediately ran over. You can poop in the toilet next to you. Chu Yuntian seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said. Dazuang walked out and said, boss, look. He took out the red round bead. You didn't take it directly from the shit. Chu Yuntian was a little helpless. It's okay, I washed it when I took it out. Dazuang said innocently. Chu Yuntian took the red bead awkwardly and asked, are you okay in your stomach? Go to work. I'll go to the basement to get something. It's okay, you go. I'm going to be busy. I'll be back soon. Dazuang continued what he had not finished. Chapter 6, Experiment, Part 2. Chu Yuntian came to the basement and thought about the red beads in his hand. It was pulled out so quickly. It seems that it has not been digested at all. Didn't he eat it? Or is it too hard to digest? Damn it, since it can't be digested, I'll break it up. Thinking of this, he came to the dissection table, picked up the scalpel, and cut it hard a few times, and then took out the bone chopping knife, and chopped it hard for a long time. It was almost powdered. Chu Yuntian picked up the cup, and poured some milk into it, and then put all the red powder in it. He quickly climbed out of the basement and shouted, Dazuang, come here. It's not that he was anxious, but he was afraid that the red powder would condense into round beads again. Boss, what's wrong again? Dazuang asked with a little doubt. It's okay. I see you've worked hard. Drink this glass of milk. Chu Yuntian pretended to be fine. I'm so embarrassed. I'm not tired at all. The silly Dazuang drank the milk in one gulp before saying it. That's good. Go get busy. Call me when you're done. I'll pay you for the anti-theft windows first. Chu Yuntian said, and went back to the computer. Okay, thank you, boss. Then he went back to the windows. Chu Yuntian's family lives on the first floor, and they should have installed anti-theft windows a long time ago. However, although this broken apartment building is 6 stories high, there are only 3 or 4 families living in it. He has never heard of anyone's house being robbed, and of course there is nothing to steal, so he didn't care. If he didn't want to find a test product, he wouldn't spend that much money to install anti-theft windows. Although his parents left some money when they left, there is not much left after all these years. After a while, Dazuang came over and said, "Boss, you're done." "Well, how much?" Chu Yuntian turned around and said to him. I looked, "It should be 210 yuan, just give me 200. Dazuang said readily. "Here, stay here for a few days, and I'll give you the rest of the money after I finish the experiment." Chu Yuntian took out 200 yuan and said. Dazuang still had some disbelief. "Boss, are you serious? Will you really give me 5,000 after you're done?" "Of course, as long as you listen to me these few days, the medical experiment will not hurt you. At most, you'll have diarrhea like just now." Chu Yuntian patted Dazuang on the shoulder and said, "Ouch, wait a minute, I'm going to have diarrhea again when you say that." Then he ran into the toilet again. "Hey, you still pooped in the toilet?" Chu Yuntian said quickly. After a long while, Dazuang came out with the red round bead and said, "Hey, boss, why is there another one? You took it out with your hands again." Chu Yuntian dodged. Dazuang laughed and continued, "I just pooped out one. Why is there another one? Give it to me. Don't worry about it. Go and have a rest, get some food later, and sleep on the sofa in the living room tonight." Chu Yuntian snatched the red bead and said, "Hey, I didn't wash this," Dazuang said in a low voice. Chu Yuntian glanced at the red bead, rolled his eyes at Dazuang and thought, "I've already taken it, and you're just saying that." He said angrily, "You take a rest. I'm going to do an experiment downstairs. Don't disturb me, and don't come down." "Well, boss, go ahead. I'll watch TV for a while." Dazuang turned on the TV and said. Chu Yuntian went down to the basement and couldn't figure out why it was useless. "Isn't this thing for eating? But it can be restored to its original shape after being chopped so finely. There must be some special energy in it that I don't know about." After thinking for a long time, Chu Yuntian recalled the whole process of getting the round bead. The big rat, the heart, and the blood were all released. Suddenly an idea jumped out. This thing can't be useful only when it is put into the heart. But how can I put it into Dazuang's heart? Do I have to do an operation? Can Dazuang still survive? Heart surgery is different from general surgery, and the failure rate is extremely high, not to mention cutting the heart open. Chu Yuntian thought to himself, but he had no good solution. Is there any other way to get this round bead into the heart without surgery? Chu Yuntian, who had been thinking for a long time, suddenly touched his chin and said to himself, "If I turn this round bead into powder and then inject it into Dazuang's body with blood and then use blood as a medium to flow through the heart, will the round bead stay inside?" Thinking of this, Chu Yuntian immediately climbed out of the basement and saw Dazuang still sitting in front of the TV watching the news. It seemed to be saying, "Does the existence of this virus, while infecting humans, really have the opportunity to allow humans to enter the era of evolution?" "Dazuang, stop watching. Come, draw some blood for me." Chu Yuntian turned off the TV and said, "Ah, what are you doing with blood?" Dazuang was puzzled. "Don't worry about it, it's the teacher's homework," Chu Yuntian said impatiently. "Okay, how much do you want to draw?" Dazuang said puzzledly. "This tube is enough." Chu Yuntian took out a needle tube. "Then you come, I'll get something to eat after you draw it." Dazuang rolled up his sleeves and said, "Well, Dazuang, do you believe that humans will evolve?" Chu Yuntian said while drawing blood. "Who cares? I didn't study much, so I don't know these things. It's not my turn to evolve. I care about making more money and going home to marry a wife," Dazuang said indifferently. After drawing blood, Chu Yuntian said to Dazuang, "If you are hungry, just look at what is in the refrigerator and make something to eat. Don't be polite. I'm going to do experiments. You don't want to eat?" Dazuang said to Chu Yuntian, who was about to climb into the basement again. Chu Yuntian ignored Dazuang's words and went to the basement. He put Dazuang's blood aside, took out the electric grinding wheel for grinding bones during dissection, and fixed the round bead in a glass container. In order to prevent the powder from floating everywhere, Chu Yuntian directly wrapped his hands with a towel and put the grinding wheel into the container to grind the round bead for a while until a small pile of red powder appeared inside, and then he withdrew his hands. Put Dazuang's blood in a test tube, then pour the powder in and stir it. There is no difference from ordinary blood at all. After climbing out of the basement, Chu Yuntian saw Dazuang sitting at the table eating sausages and steamed buns. He stabbed Dazuang's arm without saying anything. "Boss, what are you doing?" Dazuang said, holding his hand to put the steamed bun into his mouth. "It's okay. I'll give it back to you after I use it up," Chu Yuntian said with a smile. Just after the blood in the syringe was transfused, Dazuang suddenly twitched and fell to the ground. After twitching for a while, there was no movement. Chu Yuntian was a little confused. Did it work? Would he die from adverse reactions? Thinking of this, Chu Yuntian quickly touched Dazuang's heartbeat and pulse. Fortunately, he didn't die, but his heartbeat was too fast. Would he mutate? Thinking of this, Chu Yuntian quickly dragged him into the basement, threw him into an iron cage, and then added another lock before he felt relieved. Looking at the unconscious Dazuang, Chu Yuntian didn't know what to do. It seemed that he could only wait for Dazuang to wake up. Chapter 7 Experiment, Part 2. Bang! Chu Yuntian, who was awakened, had a splitting headache. He grabbed his hair with both hands for a while before slowly turning it around. He took his hands off and took a look. Unexpectedly, his hands were full of hair. It seems that the virus has already eroded my body a lot. There are only 3 days at most. If I can't find a way to solve this virus, I'm afraid I will become a mindless beast. Chu Yuntian said in a weak tone. "Is anyone there? Boss?" Chu Yuntian heard the sound and knew that it must be Dazuang who woke up. He walked out of the room and saw Dazuang looking around, so he shouted, "Don't look, this is my laboratory. Did you make the sound just now? Hey, boss, you are here. I thought you were upstairs." Dazuang said with relief when he saw Chu Yuntian. Chu Yuntian walked over and looked at the iron cage in the room. The 2 big padlocks had fallen to the ground. He immediately said with some surprise, "Did you do this? How did you do it?" "I don't know. I just pulled it hard twice and the lock broke." Dazuang also walked over and said. Then Dazuang asked in confusion, "No, boss, why did you lock me in the big iron cage? What happened to me last night?" "Nothing. I don't know why you fainted after I gave you a blood transfusion last night. I put you in this room because I was afraid something might happen to you." Chu Yuntian answered Dazuang's question and immediately asked, "How do you feel now?" "Nothing much. It's just that, as soon as I exerted force, I felt like something was helping me, and then my strength became much stronger," Dazuang said blankly. "That's right, Dazuang, you have evolved." He ran over and picked up the needle and stabbed Dazuang again, saying, "I'm drawing some blood." This time, Chu Yuntian clearly felt that Dazuang's skin toughness was much stronger than before. "Okay, you did it. How did I evolve?" Dazuang looked at Chu Yuntian puzzled. "Don't worry about it. Believe me, this is a good thing. Although you can't do whatever you want now, nothing can hurt you when you go out." Chu Yuntian pulled out the needle with force and said, "I'll go out later. You can do whatever you want up there. Just don't run around." "Oh, I'll wait for you to come back. Hey, is there anything to eat? I'm starving now. And tell me what happened when the time comes," Dazuang said blankly. "Eat whatever is in the refrigerator." After saying that, Chu Yuntian left without looking back. Chu Yuntian walked out of the door and saw that the fog outside had almost dissipated, but there seemed to be a thick fog in the sky. There were already armed police patrolling the streets, and it seemed that something big was really going to happen. Chu Yuntian directly found a shared tram, scanned the code to open it, and walked to the CDC where Fatty worked while calling him. "Hello, brother Chu, what's the matter?" Fatty's voice came from the phone. Chu Yuntian hurriedly said, "Are you at work? I'll be at your door in a while. Come out for a moment. I need your help with something important." "I'm at work. What's going on?" "I just finished my work and I'll go down now," the fat man asked in confusion. "Then wait for me. I'll be there soon. I'll tell you when the time comes. I'm hanging up first," Chu Yuntian said and hung up the phone. Chu Yuntian felt confused as he walked. There were fewer vehicles on the street except for the patrolling police. Even if there was a car occasionally, it would pass by very quickly, not to mention people traveling. Before he arrived at the door of the CDC, he saw the fat man waiting there in a white coat. When he saw Chu Yuntian, the fat man immediately ran over and said, "What's going on? I have to go to work later." Chu Yuntian took out Dazuang's blood and said, "Help me test the blood composition and cell tissue, and don't let others know." "Whose blood is this?" the fat man asked in confusion. "Don't worry about it. Help me once, and I'll treat you to a meal later." Chu Yuntian patted the fat man on the shoulder and said, "What are you talking about? I'll go now. Wait for me, and be careful. It's not safe outside now. Occasionally, some severely infected people will come out and hurt people," the fat man said as he walked in. "Well, hurry up, I'll wait for you," Chu Yuntian urged. Looking at the police patrolling outside with guns and live ammunition, Chu Yuntian felt that, even if 1 or 2 infected people ran out, he could handle it. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, he saw the fat man running out in a hurry. Before he ran to the front, he hurriedly said to Chu Yuntian, "Where did you get this blood?" The blood cells are exactly the same as the infected virus cells, but they are almost not aggressive. It's amazing. Does that mean that, as long as the infected person is transported with a large amount of such blood, he will not become a crazy person without thinking? Chu Yuntian also said anxiously. "That won't happen. Even if a lot of blood is transported, the human metabolism will be completely consumed in a few days, unless the body can produce this powerful but harmless virus cell by itself." The fat man paused and said, "Well, I understand. Go ahead and do your work. Also, you can check the hearts of those severely infected people. Maybe you can make a breakthrough in your current work." Chu Yuntian said earnestly, "Didn't you say last time that your tube of blood is related to the hearts of severely infected people?" "Brother Chu, what do you know? Are you still hiding it from me?" the fat man said anxiously. "It's not that I don't want to tell you, but I'm not sure. You have so many complete equipment. Can your experimental data be less than mine?" Chu Yuntian said helplessly. "We have all the equipment, but we are not as crazy as you, so we have not gained anything from the experiment so far," the fat man said. "Let's not talk about it for now. Go ahead and do your work. I'll call you when I have a substantial breakthrough," Chu Yuntian said, and was about to leave. The fat man shook his head helplessly and turned back to the center. "When I got home, I saw Dazuang punching and kicking. When he saw Chu Yuntian coming back, he ran over and said, 'You're back. Can you tell me what happened now?' 'Nothing. That's a drug I'm going to make recently. You've seen the news. There's a virus breaking out among the crowd. People infected will become bloodthirsty beasts. Your body is now completely immune to that virus, and your body has also evolved. But there's still a little problem. I have to help you deal with the sequelae regularly," Chu Yuntian said casually. Dazuang was a little angry and said, "Didn't you say it was a small experiment? How did it become like this? Can I change back?" Chu Yuntian smiled and said, "This is a good thing for you, isn't it? Besides, if it weren't for me, you would have died if you were infected with that virus. Now, not only are you immune to that virus, but you've also evolved to be much stronger than before. You should thank me." Dazuang didn't know how to refute it, but he always felt something was wrong. "I got the news from the CDC that there seems to be no way to resist this virus, and it is very likely to break out," Chu Yuntian said lightly. What should we do now?" Dazuang's attention was immediately diverted, and he said immediately, "You are the safest one now. What are you afraid of? Wait until night. Go outside and take a look. If no one pays attention to you, just break open the door and go in. If you see a supermarket, just take food and drink. Don't be afraid that the police will find you later. Now they can't estimate these things. If there is someone, just kill him. The means are a little cruel, and the police will think it was done by a severely infected person." Chu Yuntian instigated. What if you meet the police?" Dazuang shrank back a little. "What are you afraid of? They don't know what you did. You can just take a shortcut back after taking the things. Remember, if you meet anyone except the police, don't let him follow you, even if you don't kill him," Chu Yuntian warned. Hearing this, Dazuang trembled and was a little afraid of Chu Yuntian's cruelty. Which normal person could say such cruel words? Chapter 8, Killing. It was getting dark. Dazuang, who had listened to Chu Yuntian's repeated instructions, walked out with a big bag on his back. Remember that it is not safe outside at night. If you don't listen to my advice, you may not be able to come back. Chu Yuntian did not forget to say this before he left. Well, I know. After that, he left with the big bag on his back. After locking the door, Chu Yuntian immediately walked to the computer and began to search for some information about the current virus infection. He opened the official website of Shishi City and the first article he saw was actually a legal provision, non-retreat self-defense law. He clicked on it and took a look. It said in times of crisis, people infected with the virus will lose their reason due to the virus. Hereby, the police have the right to shoot if 3 warnings are ineffective. I hope that people in the city will reduce their travel to avoid harming innocent people. So that's it. Such a law should have been enacted long ago to make those who don't know what's good for them afraid. Close this page and try to find out how this virus came about. After looking through it for a long time, I didn't see any posts about the origin of the virus. However, a post called on biological evolution and the cost of evolution attracted Chu Yuntian's attention. It said, after sampling, it was found that the creatures in the outside world are evolving wildly and entering an uncontrolled mutation. This evolution is not the evolution in the theory of evolution that we are familiar with, but a fearless and crazy evolution. It is not evolution for survival, but evolution first, and then looking for living space. This kind of unreasonable mutation is accompanied by an unknown virus. I don't know whether it is because of the virus that the creatures mutate, or because of the mutation that the virus is produced, but this virus does not cause much harm to all creatures. Even if the evolved things are not suitable for their survival, they can make up for this deficiency by changing the living environment. However, this virus is quite harmful to humans, and no obvious evolved humans have been found so far. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian thought to himself, is it just the kind of random evolution? What does it grow? What ability do they evolve to find a suitable environment? Then why did it become a crazy virus when it came to humans? Or is wisdom something that should not exist in the first place? After thinking hard for a long time, there was no answer. Pa 2 knocks on the door sounded. Chu Yuntian walked to the door and said vigilantly, who is it? It's me, Dazuang. Open the door. Hearing that it was Dazuang's voice, Chu Yuntian immediately opened the door and saw Dazuang, who was covered in blood, standing outside the door with a backpack on his back. What? Did you fight? Chu Yuntian let Dazuang in and locked the door. Damn, everything was going well, but when I came back, I met 2 bald guys. They grabbed me and bit me like crazy. Not only did they not listen, but they were also very resistant to beatings. I was so anxious that I smashed their heads and ran back. Dazuang threw down his exaggeratedly large backpack and said nervously, well, are you okay? Chu Yuntian said lightly, it's okay. Although it hurts a little, I didn't lose a piece of meat. Dazuang grinned. It's good that you're okay. You can go out and get some later, and then you don't have to go out. I will find a way to solve the sequelae in your body tomorrow, and then you don't have to worry about it at all. Chu Yuntian said lightly. What sequelae? Can't you feel it? Dazuang touched his body and said, you'll be dead when you feel it. Chu Yuntian threatened deliberately. Okay, I'll go out and get some more and try to get back enough food for us to eat for several months. Dazuang agreed with a little panic and then walked towards the door. Okay, remember to take food that can be preserved for a long time. I'll go to the basement to experiment with new medicines, and I should be able to help you solve it completely tomorrow, Chu Yuntian said with a wicked smile. Dazuang walked to the door and waved his hand casually and left. Chu Yuntian climbed into the basement, took out the ether that had not been used for a long time, and then took out a 50ml syringe, filled it up, and placed it in a small sealed container. After waiting for nearly 2 hours without seeing Dazuang coming back, Chu Yuntian said to himself anxiously, nothing will happen, right? It shouldn't happen. As long as he doesn't provoke those armed police with guns, nothing should be able to hurt him. After waiting for more than an hour, Dazuang finally came back, but this time he not only carried a big backpack, but also half a pig. As soon as he entered the door, He immediately said, I was afraid that we would have enough of those things, so I went to the cold meat place next door and carried half a pig back. I felt that those things I ate at noon had no effect, and I was still very hungry. Chu Yuntian was speechless and said, it's been so long, I thought something happened to you. Dazuang smiled embarrassedly again. I don't feel full when I eat those steamed buns, sausages, etc. now. Is this a sequel? Oh. Do you want to eat meat now? Chu Yuntian asked with some surprise. Not really, I just feel that eating those steamed buns and other things is useless. I feel hungry after eating them. Dazuang said with some concern. It's okay, go and have a rest, you won't be hungry tomorrow. Chu Yuntian pointed to something else. Okay, what medicine do you have you researched it? Dazuang asked with doubt. Well, I'll give it to you tomorrow. Go put these things in the basement and then have a rest. Chu Yuntian looked through the things in the big package and said, okay. Dazuang put the 2 big backpacks and the half pig into the basement, then tore off a pig leg and said, I'll cook this and eat it before I rest. Okay, then you go upstairs. I'll think about something here. Chu Yuntian said, and went back to another room in the basement. Lying on the bed, Chu Yuntian carefully thought about all the details of what he was going to do tomorrow, trying not to have any accidents, because he was definitely not Dazuang's opponent now. If something went wrong, he would most likely be the one to die. When he woke up the next day, Chu Yuntian, who was sitting on the bed, felt dizzy, and it wasn't just his hair. It seemed that the hair in other places was also falling off. After sitting for half an hour, he slowly stood up. Climbing out of the basement, he saw Dazuang still sleeping on the sofa. Chu Yuntian went up and gave a light kick, saying, get up, I've prepared the antidote. Dazuang opened his sleepy eyes and said, it's ready. What do you need me to do? Come down with me, Chu Yuntian said, and went to the basement. After waiting for a while, he saw Dazuang slowly climbing down the ladder. Seeing him coming down, Chu Yuntian immediately said, the injection of this medicine may be a little painful. I hope you can bear it. In order to prevent you from hurting me in pain, I need to tie you up with a corset. Do you have any opinion? Dazuang walked up to him and said, no problem, just tell me what you want me to do. As long as you explain it clearly to me, don't lie to me, like you did last time. Haha, it's nothing. You go lie down on the table. This is a medicine I have researched. I will inject it into you when the time comes. There may be some discomfort, but you should be able to bear it. Chu Yuntian said slowly, while holding the syringe. Okay, he said and lay on the dissection table beside him. After Chu Yuntian fixed him with a corset, Dazuang said threateningly, if you are lying to me, I will be rude to you. Don't worry, with your current physical condition, I have no power to fight back against you. As he said this, he installed the needle on the syringe filled with ether. He pierced Dazuang's arm with force, pushed and started the injection until all 50 milliliters were injected into his body, and then slowly pulled out the needle. You may feel a little dizzy and feel that your body is out of control. It doesn't matter. You can also take a nap. It should be fine when you wake up. Chu Yuntian pretended to be very calm and said, don't lie to me. Dazuang still had doubts about Chu Yuntian before he fell into a coma. Chapter 9 Detoxification. Looking at the unconscious Dazuang, Chu Yuntian showed an evil smile at the corner of his mouth. I didn't lie to you. It's true that you won't be hungry after today, he said jokingly. Chu Yuntian took out the scalpel and inserted it directly into Dazuang's heart without hesitation. Dazuang trembled for a moment, and then he didn't move anymore. Slowly cut open Dazuang's skin, opened his chest, and took out his heart without any hesitation. Chu Yuntian was a little excited holding the beating heart, and finally he didn't have to worry about the damn virus eroding himself. But what made Chu Yuntian feel a little desperate was that when he cut open the heart and took out the red bead, he just squeezed it lightly, and the red bead was crushed like sand, and there was no intention to gather again. What's going on? Why is this red bead disposable? Or am I using the wrong method? Chu Yuntian muttered to himself a little crazily. Then Chu Yuntian, who was sitting limp on the ground, didn't know what to do because there was not much time left for him. It was less than 2 days before he completely turned into that kind of crazy beast. He grabbed his hair and thought hard. Am I really going to become like that? No. I would rather die than become that kind of thing, because that would no longer be considered a human being. If I lose everything that defines me as a human being, what is the difference between living and being an animal? Chu Yuntian, grabbing his hair tightly, said almost crazily, there must be a way, there must be a way. After sitting like this for nearly an hour, Chu Yuntian suddenly stood up. Isn't there still a transparent round bead? Although he doesn't know what it does, and doesn't know if it will do any harm, he has no other choice. He went over to pick up the transparent round bead, and looked at it for a long time, and all kinds of thoughts popped up in his mind. Could this not be the kind of round bead with energy? It's just a stone in the stomach of a big rat? And is the method he used wrong? If it's not wrong, why did it turn into gravel when he took it out? Chu Yuntian, who had been thinking hard, but to no avail, decided to take a gamble, because he found that all the things he was worried about were unnecessary. If he didn't take the gamble, he probably wouldn't wake up when he went to bed, and he didn't have time. Reluctantly, he took the needle, drew a tube of blood, and then ground the transparent round beads into powder. After mixing it, he stabbed it with a little hesitation. As soon as the injection was completed, he felt that the blood in his body was boiling, flowing in his body at an astonishing speed. A huge dizziness came over him, and then he lost consciousness. When Chu Yuntian was unconscious, the outside was in chaos. The armed police patrolling the streets had all been withdrawn, and the virus had completely broken out within 2 days. The outside of the city had become a forbidden area for humans. The lush and unknown plants completely covered the roads and bridges that had once existed. Even the signal towers were knocked to the ground by the plants with infinite vitality. Various domestic animals were chasing the original owner, but there were few ferocious beasts. After all, humans had ruled the earth for such a long time that there were no large carnivores around humans, but now all creatures seemed to have become bloodthirsty beasts. All the survivors in the surrounding villages and towns began to flee to the city. In the scenic area not far away, the zoo that was originally for people to play has become a paradise for various strange monsters. Some troops have already begun to station outside the city, but they are not going to enter the city, but to start a large-scale cleanup of various creatures outside the city, because the biggest threat to humans is no longer the so-called virus. Chu Yuntian opened his still hazy eyes and saw that he was still in the basement of his home. He moved a few times and nothing was unusual, but he felt a strong sense of hunger in his stomach. He took out his mobile phone and scanned it. He saw that the missed calls on it were all from Fatty. He looked at the time and found that he had been in a coma for 3 days. He stood up slowly and felt that he had no strength at all. He was not like Dazhuang, who became powerful after waking up. Seeing the half-pig that Dazhuang had removed a leg not far away, Chu Yuntian swallowed his saliva and prepared to cook something to eat first. Chu Yuntian gnawed on a pig leg that had just been cooked, thinking, although I didn't become as powerful as Dazhuang, at least I woke up and didn't become that bold beast. After gnawing on the pig leg, Chu Yuntian lay on the bed thinking about what to do in the future. I don't know what's going on outside now, he muttered to himself. As he said that, he took out his cell phone and called the fat man. Brother Chu, what have you been doing these days? Why didn't you answer my call? The fat man who answered the phone said anxiously. Me? Nothing, I was just a little busy and didn't hear it. Chu Yuntian, who had lifted the threat of the virus, said very relaxedly. It's good that you're fine. Don't go out these days. It's a mess outside. Now all the bald infected people are running outside, and people outside the city are also running into the city. There are troops stationed outside the city. I heard from above that they want to clear out an area and then build a safe zone. In a few days, the infected people in the city will be purged. The fat man reminded nervously. Ah, is it so serious outside now? Weren't there armed police patrolling a few days ago? Chu Yuntian asked with a little doubt. The armed police are also in chaos inside, and many of the patrolling personnel outside are also infected, so they are staying at the police station to bring in reinforcement. The fat man said anxiously. Oh, how are you doing inside? Chu Yuntian asked. We are under martial law here too. A team of soldiers is defending here. I heard from the officer that we seem to be changing this into a research institute. I also heard that there seems to be an evolver in the army, but I don't know what it is like. The fat man said. Oh, evolver? You can find out some information about this. Chu Yuntian said with interest. How do you know about evolvers? The fat man was puzzled. I also saw it on the internet. I don't know. Chu Yuntian concealed. You are lying. The internet was disconnected 2 days ago. Now the phone can't be dialed out of the city. The signal tower outside has collapsed. The fat man said in disbelief. Chu Yuntian rubbed his nose and said with some guilt, I saw it before. Brother Chu, you are hiding it from me. I don't care about you anymore. The fat man said with a little anger. Oh, no. Do you remember the last time I asked you to dissect the heart of the infected? In the future, open the heart of any creature you send to see. Maybe you will get something. Chu Yuntian said confidently. Okay, you stay at home for a few more days. The troops should enter the city in a few days, and you will be safe by then. The fat man reminded again. Okay, brother, go ahead and do your work. Chu Yuntian hung up the phone. The fat man looked at the phone and said to himself, this guy must be hiding something from me. Chapter 10, Superpowers Appear. Chu Yuntian, lying on the bed, fell asleep slowly without knowing it. The next day after waking up, he felt much better and no longer felt weak, so he decided to secretly go to the roof to see what was happening outside. Hearing what others said was not as real as seeing it with his own eyes. He took out the pistol and loaded it with bullets, then slowly climbed out of the basement. He first looked around the room to see if there was any movement. The door was closed and there was no sign of damage to the windows. He listened at the door for a long time, but there was no sound. He slowly opened the door. As soon as he went out, he smelled a bloody smell coming from nowhere. He ignored it and slowly climbed to the roof. When he climbed to the 4th floor, he vaguely heard a slight sobbing sound from a girl. He lay on the door of a house and listened for a while. It should be from this house. Chu Yuntian had no interest in meddling in other people's business, so he went straight to the roof. When he came to the roof, he lowered his body and slowly moved to the side close to the road. He slightly poked his head out to take a look. He saw several bald infected people biting something meat in a cold meat shop next to him. It turns out that this thing doesn't just attack people. It seems that they like all kinds of meat, Chu Yuntian whispered. At this moment, Chu Yuntian suddenly felt someone grab his shoulder. His heart skipped a beat, and he kicked out without looking back. He used all his strength to kick the person behind him to fall down, but the hand holding his shoulder did not loosen. Chu Yuntian bent down and pulled forward. With a swish, his shirt was pulled out. Looking back, a middle-aged woman infected in yellow casual clothes got up from the ground and was about to pounce on him again. With 2 bangs, Chu Yuntian raised the gun in his hand and shot the woman infected in the head twice. Looking at the infected who fell to the ground and was still pulling out, Chu Yuntian immediately realized that it was not good. Looking downstairs, several infected people who were eating unknown raw meat in the cold meat shop turned back and saw Chu Yuntian on the roof. They screamed and ran towards their community. Without saying a word, he immediately turned around and ran downstairs, but just as he reached the 3rd floor, he heard noisy footsteps coming from below. Fuck. Chu Yuntian cursed inwardly and immediately turned around and ran upstairs. A pistol might be able to deal with one infected person, but if there were several, he might be knocked down by other infected people before he could even shoot. Chu Yuntian ran to the rooftop and looked around, trying to find a hidden place to hide. It was empty, with only some rags thrown away by someone in the corner of the rooftop, and some very old broken cabinets, which should have been thrown on the rooftop as garbage by the previous residents. He ran over and hid directly in a small cabinet with a single door. When he opened the door, there were still some moldy old clothes inside. Without thinking, Chu Yuntian hid in it and curled up tightly in the corner of the cabinet. Even if he opened it, he would not be able to see him if he did not stick his head in. At this time, he only heard a noisy footsteps outside, accompanied by heavy breathing. He hoped that these infected people with no IQ would not search everywhere. Chu Yuntian, who was hiding in the closet, didn't dare to breathe. He regretted hiding here because his heartbeat was very fast now. He could feel that his blood flow was much faster and sticky sweat was constantly seeping out of his pores. It wasn't that he was so scared, but he was not used to this closed and oppressive environment. He felt like he was waiting for death. If he had known this would happen, he might as well have fought hard just now. He might have had some chance of winning if he had blocked the entrance to the corridor, but it was too late now. Several bold infected people had all reached the top of the building. Chu Yuntian stared at the movement of the closet door while listening to the footsteps outside. If something opened the door at this time, he would never hesitate. No matter what it was, he would shoot twice first. After a while, he heard that the footsteps outside gradually disappeared. He didn't know whether the infected people had left or stopped moving. However, he didn't hear the footsteps going away, so they should have stopped moving. He waited for more than half an hour without moving. Finally, he couldn't stand this oppressive atmosphere anymore and was ready to open the closet to take a look at the situation outside. Slowly pushing the door open a crack, he saw an infected person looking at him sideways. Their eyes met. After 4 or 5 seconds, when Chu Yuntian was about to raise his gun to shoot, he found the problem. That is, why did it see him, but didn't pounce on him? While he was thinking, the infected person actually opened the door and saw 2 infected people wandering slowly not far away, with no intention of coming over. What's going on? Chu Yuntian, who was holding a pistol, was stunned for a moment, not daring to make any moves. After 2 minutes, the infected person who just looked at him sideways actually slowly touched the gun in his hand with his claws. Is it interested in this gun? Chu Yuntian thought. After a few seconds, Chu Yuntian made a bold move, shook his wrist, and actually threw the pistol out. At the moment of throwing the pistol, 3 infected people actually rushed towards the position of the pistol and fell to the road downstairs after a series of collisions. The 3 infected people immediately roared and ran downstairs. Chu Yuntian was stunned for a long time and thought incomprehensibly, these 3 infected people actually like pistols so much. What a joke. If they know how to use pistols, they will not be bloodthirsty beasts. After waiting for about 10 minutes, the extremely nervous Chu Yuntian slowly calmed down. He leaned over to the side of the building and looked out slightly. He saw that the 3 infected people were actually surrounding the pistol and scratching the pistol with their claws, but they didn't seem to pick up the pistol. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian was even more confused. After hesitating for a moment, Chu Yuntian thought it was better to go home first, so that no more infected people would come up. This time he didn't have a gun, and he didn't want to be dismembered again. He removed a wooden board from the old cabinet and slowly walked down the stairs. Just as he reached the 4th floor, he saw a cute little girl about 15 or 16 years old, wearing shorts and suspenders, running out of the house, chasing an infected person behind her. Her hands and feet were tied, and she could only jump to chase the little girl. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian immediately ran over and hit the infected person's leg with a wooden board. With a plop, the infected person was knocked to the ground. Chu Yuntian immediately ran home after bypassing the infected on the ground. He didn't want to attract other infected because of the noise here. Big brother, wait for me. Chu Yuntian, who was running home, heard a crying female voice. Looking back, he saw that the little girl actually followed him. He ignored the little girl's following and ran directly to the 1st floor. He pushed open the door and ran in and locked it immediately. Chu Yuntian, who was panting, turned around and saw that the little girl actually followed him into the house. Why did you follow me? He asked in confusion. I have nowhere to go, so I followed you. The little girl said aggrievedly. Who was the infected person who chased you just now? Why are your hands and feet still tied? Chu Yuntian asked. The little girl was about to cry, and she said pitifully, that's my father. After he was infected, he asked me to tie him up. Dad asked me to find a safe place to hide. I didn't know where to go. After 2 days, Dad became like that. Woo woo. What about your mother? Chu Yuntian said indifferently, looking at the crying little girl. My mother was also infected. After being infected, she went out on her own. She said she didn't want to implicate me and my father, but in the end, my father was still infected. Woohoo, the little girl sobbed. Was your mother wearing a yellow casual outfit when she went out? Chu Yuntian asked lightly. How do you know? Did you see her? Is mom okay? The little girl said with a little hope. She also became infected and wanted to eat me just now. Fortunately, I ran fast. It was not that Chu Yuntian was afraid that she would know that he killed her mother, but that it was troublesome to explain. Where is she? The little girl asked anxiously. What's the matter? Do you still want to go back to her stomach? Chu Yuntian said jokingly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 11, Mastering Superpowers. No, Chu Yuntian said before the little girl finished. I don't care about that. If you want to stay here, you must obey my orders completely. Otherwise, please leave. Okay, but do you have any food here, big brother? The little girl said aggrievedly. Come with me and call me master here. I'm not prepared to interact with you on an equal footing. Of course, if you think I'm a pervert or unfair, then please stay away from me, Chu Yuntian said as he walked to the basement. The little girl followed closely and said, no, I really have nowhere to go. Please let me stay here, big brother. After hearing this, Chu Yuntian stopped and looked back at the little girl. The underdeveloped body exuded the breath of youth, with a small chest, and wearing shorts, so that 2 straight white legs were exposed, and there was a head of black short long hair, big eyes still with tears from crying just now, and the pursed little mouth was indeed a little cute. The little girl was a little scared by being looked at, and said timidly, Master, come with me, there is food downstairs. After saying that, she climbed down to the basement. Down there? After saying that, Chu Yuntian understood a little more as he watched Chu Yuntian open the cabinet and climb down. After going down to the basement, Chu Yuntian pointed to the boxes of instant noodles and to large backpacks beside him and said, there are all kinds of food in there. You can eat whatever you want when you are hungry. However, if you dare to disobey my orders, I will throw you out immediately. The girl seemed to have not heard what Chu Yuntian said at all. When she saw the instant noodles and 2 large backpacks on the side, she immediately ran over to open the backpacks and said excitedly, wow, so many delicious foods. After that, she picked up a big sausage and some bread and stuffed them into her mouth. Looking at the girl who was eating voraciously, Chu Yuntian asked in confusion, your family didn't eat anything in the past day? Don't you have any food stored at home? The girl sobbed without even raising her head and said, at the beginning, there was some, but it was all eaten in 2 days. Chu Yuntian smiled bitterly and sat on the chair waiting for the girl to eat. Although he was also hungry, these foods did not seem to satisfy Chu Yuntian's stomach. He needed meat. Burp, I'm finally full. Big brother. No, master, why don't you eat? The girl looked at Chu Yuntian sitting on the chair and said, don't worry about it. You sleep in that room from now on. Don't come out if you have nothing to do, especially when I'm doing experiments, otherwise I will punish you. Chu Yuntian pointed to the room where the iron cage was placed. Since Guo Chenglan's sister died, Chu Yuntian spent a long time to clean up the bed and everything. This, the girl said, pushing open the door of the room and said, why is the bed in a big iron cage? Have you ever raised any large animals before? Then she walked in. Chu Yuntian also walked over and stood at the door looking at the girl indifferently without saying a word. I'm sorry, master, I was wrong. The girl stuck out her tongue, as if she knew she shouldn't ask nonsense. Okay, don't worry about things that you shouldn't worry about in the future. I will let you know what you should know. You take a rest and don't come out if you have nothing to do. Chu Yuntian turned around to leave, but after taking 2 steps, he turned back and asked, what's your name? Feng Xiaoya. Master, you can just call me Xiaoya from now on. The girl said sweetly. Got it. Chu Yuntian said, and walked out of the room. He was going to get something to eat first. He didn't know whether he was nervous just now or tired from running down, and he was very hungry. Chu Yuntian cooked a pot of meat, and while eating, he thought about what happened today. Why didn't the 3 infected people attack me? I was clearly in front of them, and why were they so interested in the gun? After finishing the pot of meat, he still couldn't think of any reasonable explanation. They clearly saw me, and I clearly saw them eating the meat in the cold meat shop, which means they also eat meat. I also saw them scratching the gun downstairs, and they didn't look like they were intelligent. It didn't make sense, no matter how I thought about it. Chu Yuntian, who was thinking hard, but to no avail, suddenly had an idea in his mind. They saw me. Did they see me? They didn't see me. They must not have seen me. Otherwise, all this is completely illogical. But why didn't they see me? I was clearly in front of them. He still felt unreasonable and was full of doubts. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration came to him. He remembered the virus he had solved and the transparent round bead. An absurd idea came into his mind. Isn't it that I became invisible at that time? Chu Yuntian muttered to himself. It's very likely. This is the only way to explain it. But how did I do it? Chu Yuntian thought to himself, ready to experiment whether his idea was right. He came to a mirror, closed his eyes and thought that he was being chased by mutants. He also thought that he wanted to be invisible and tried his best to find the feeling of invisibility. He suddenly opened his eyes and saw his face in the mirror, which was flushed by himself. He was a little disappointed and said, "This is too bullshit. I'm also crazy." Chu Yuntian, who was about to leave, suddenly remembered that he was in the cabinet and there were several infected people outside. The depressed emotions, the feeling of accelerated heartbeat and rapid blood flow, turned around and looked at himself in the mirror, slowly quickened his breathing, tried to control his blood and heartbeat, and slowly felt that all the pores on his body began to ooze out streams of sticky liquid, and a magical scene happened. Chu Yuntian in the mirror slowly disappeared, but his clothes were still there, like a piece of clothing floating in the air, a little weird. At this time, Chu Yuntian felt that there seemed to be a flow of energy in his body. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian's surprise could not be expressed in words. He quickly took off his clothes, and then looked at himself in the mirror, and found that he had completely disappeared. He looked at his body again, and a thick layer of transparent liquid was sticking to him, like a layer of film on his body. He slowly touched the transparent mucus on his body, and found that it was really a layer of film, but it seemed that he could not be pulled away from his body, and it was unusually flexible. But the next second he smiled bitterly, and said to himself, "Is it fucking impossible for me to use weapons in the future? I have to run naked when I use my abilities? This is too absurd. It's better to have something than nothing," he thought helplessly to comfort himself. Slowly revealing his figure, Chu Yuntian discovered another problem. That is, when he used his ability, his heavy breathing could be heard from a long distance. If it was an infected person, it would be fine. Their brains were not working well. But if it was a human, then what was the point of being invisible or not? Even if they couldn't see you, they would know that there was someone there by hearing your breathing. So what was the point? Slowly, Chu Yuntian fell into deep thought again. Episode 12. Going out to explore. Chu Yuntian, who had been thinking hard, but to no avail, had no other options. It seemed that he could only slowly train his breathing rhythm to see if he could make his breathing sound quieter, so that he would not be heard by others when he went out to do things or escape for his life. He would die unjustly. Thinking of this, Chu Yuntian went back to bed and lay down, slowly starting to practice how to make his heart beat faster and his blood flow faster, but his exhalation steady. It sounds simple, but in fact, this kind of behavior that violates the laws of the human body is difficult to achieve. A faster heartbeat is equivalent to being in a state of tension or fear, but as long as you take a deep breath, this emotion will slowly ease. It took a long time to practice before it was slightly effective, because he found that heartbeat and blood flow rate were not necessary conditions for triggering invisibility. The necessary condition was the secretion of that transparent liquid on the body, which was the key, but it was easy to trigger in a tense mood. Chu Yuntian, who had succeeded several times, decided to go out and try out the results of his practice, and by the way, explore the specific situation outside to see if there was anything useful to collect. "Xiaoya, I'm going out to investigate the situation. You stay at home and wait obediently. Don't open the passage to the basement, let alone go out," Chu Yuntian said lightly as he walked into Xiaoya's room. Well, good master, what are you going out for? Isn't it very dangerous outside?" Xiaoya seemed to be dozing off and said sleepily. Chu Yuntian stood there and looked at Xiaoya quietly. After a while, Xiaoya cutely stuck out her tongue and said, "Master, come back early. Well, if you are bored, you can read the books next to you and learn how to get along with your master. Chu Yuntian walked out of the room without waiting for Xiaoya to reply. He climbed to the upper room and listened to the door for a while. There was no movement outside. Then he slowly took off all his clothes and tried to control the energy in his body to flow throughout his body so that his body could quickly secrete mucus to form a thin film. He looked at himself in the mirror next to him and walked out of the house slowly without any trace. This was his first time running naked. Although there was no one on the street, only a few infected people, he still had a strange feeling. He slowly turned the corner. Help! Suddenly a shout attracted his attention. A middle-aged woman stood on a high platform and was holding a stick to hit several infected people who were about to climb up. There were only 3 or 5 infected people, but after she shouted, more than a dozen infected people from a distance also ran over, making Chu Yuntian, who originally wanted to save her, immediately retreat with a idiot in his heart. After walking through another block, he saw a small group of people stuffing things from a supermarket into a container. 3 people holding 05 type submachine guns outside were well behaved. They should be armed police. Ordinary people can't get such standard equipment, and the most important thing is that they are equipped with silencers. I saw 2 people throwing various foods, daily necessities, etc. into the carriage at a fast speed. The 3 sentinels were also very vigilant. As long as they saw an approaching infected person, they would shoot 2 shots in the head. When they were about to fill up and retreat, suddenly an infected person with a height of nearly 3 meters and an unusually large physique rushed out from the community next to them. Seeing this, the 3 sentinels opened fire without hesitation. The strong infected person just protected his head with one hand. Although he was shot several times, he didn't seem to be affected at all. Then he ran in front of the 3 people in a few steps and punched the nearest one more than 10 meters away. Then someone shouted retreat, and they hurriedly got into the car, ready to drive away. The strong infected person grabbed the side of the container and flipped the car to the ground. The people who climbed out of the car immediately fired several shots at the strong infected person, then turned around and ran away. The strong infected person couldn't catch up with them, even after running a few steps. One of them looked back and was relieved to see that the strong infected person couldn't catch up with them for a while. At this moment, a sharp claw suddenly came out from the heart in front of him. Before he could shout, his body tilted, and he lost consciousness. A black shadow flashed behind several escapees in an instant. A sharp claw cut off one person's head. After a few seconds, the escapees were killed one after another. Chu Yuntian, who saw this scene, didn't dare to breathe. He stood there motionless until the black shadow stopped, and he could see clearly that it was a female infected person with a slightly shorter stature. What was different from ordinary infected people was that it had sharp claws in its hands, and its speed was so fast that it was difficult for people to react. The strong infected person should be a power type evolver like the big rat and the big strong, and the female infected person should be an agile evolver. This is his own conclusion so far, because he only got this information after standing there for more than half an hour. The 2 evolved infected people ate a few people, and then the strong infected person picked up the remaining corpses and walked to the community next to him. They actually know how to cooperate, but it looks like a fighting instinct, not a recovery of consciousness. Chu Yuntian thought to himself and began to slowly retreat in the direction of his home. When there were still 2 streets left, Chu Yuntian discovered a huge problem. That is, his invisibility seemed to be limited because he felt very tired and hungry, as if he had been exercising vigorously for a day without stopping, and even lifting his legs to walk would exhaust all his strength. The ability in his body gradually weakened, and it seemed that it was about to be exhausted. If I show myself now, I will definitely die, just like throwing a lamb into a pack of wolves, and it's still skinned. Chu Yuntian thought, and rushed home with all his strength. Fortunately, the distance was not too far. By the time he climbed into the basement, he was exhausted, and his energy was completely depleted. Xiaoya, he shouted and slowly closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he found himself lying on the bed, and Xiaoya was sitting next to him, looking at him with big eyes. Master, you finally woke up. I was so scared. I thought something happened to you. Xiaoya said immediately when she saw him open his eyes. Chu Yuntian sat up slowly. He really felt that his body was hollowed out and was extremely weak. What time is it now? It's evening now. You've been sleeping for more than 3 hours. Well, go make something to eat. I'm hungry, Chu Yuntian said lightly. Okay master, what do you want to eat? Xiaoya stood up happily and said, are you happy with me like this? Chu Yuntian looked at Xiaoya with a little mischief and said, no, I'm just happy to see you wake up. What do you want to eat? Eat meat. From now on, my food will be meat. The rest will be yours, Chu Yuntian said. After hearing this, Xiaoya ran out immediately, but ran back after a while and said, master, there is not much meat left. Xiaoya will cook it all for you. Well, can you cook? Chu Yuntian asked with a little doubt. Of course I can. My mother taught me a long time ago, Xiaoya said with a little boast. Well, you will have to cook for us in the future, Chu Yuntian said cunningly. Well, you take a rest. I will bring it to you when it is done, Xiaoya said and walked out. Looking at Xiaoya running out, Chu Yuntian felt for the first time that it was really good to have a little girl around. Chapter 13 Evolution of Beast Meat. After more than 10 minutes, Xiaoya came in with a small bowl of pork and said, master, it's ready. Chu Yuntian took the small bowl and started to eat it voraciously. When he finished eating, he found that Xiaoya was looking at him in shock. What's wrong? Haven't you seen people eating when they are so hungry? Chu Yuntian said while chewing the meat in his mouth. No, this is for both of us, Xiaoya said with a little grievance. Ah, then you can do something else. I've been eating a lot recently, Chu Yuntian said. Okay then, Xiaoya said and ran out again. After eating a bowl of meat, Chu Yuntian lay on the bed, thinking that fortunately there was no power outage yet, otherwise he could only eat raw meat, but it probably wouldn't last long. If no one comes to clean up the city, I'm afraid that once the backup power is used up, he can only live in the dark. He slowly fell asleep in his wild thoughts. When Chu Yuntian woke up the next day, he found that, although he had eaten and rested for a night, his body still had not recovered to its peak. Although he had some strength, the strange energy in his body did not seem to have recovered much. Does it take a long time to recover from invisibility once before it can be used a second time? That's really useless, Chu Yuntian thought helplessly. Master, are you feeling better? Xiaoya said playfully as she pushed open the door. Much better, Chu Yuntian said weakly. Xiaoya came over and knelt on the bed and said, master, what did you do yesterday? It's so dangerous outside, so don't go out. The troops will definitely come back to rescue us. The troops? Haha, they should. Chu Yuntian smiled helplessly. Also, master, I read the books you asked me to read yesterday, Xiaoya said shyly with a red face. Oh, how's your study going? Chu Yuntian joked. Should I treat you like that too? Xiaoya said in a thin mosquito-like voice. Chu Yuntian suddenly pulled Xiaoya into his arms and said, what's wrong? Are you thinking about love? As he said that, he kissed Xiaoya on her delicate red lips. No way. After saying that, Xiaoya pushed Chu Yuntian away and ran out immediately. Little girl, if the situation wasn't so bad now, I would have eaten you a long time ago. Chu Yuntian said to himself jokingly and got out of bed. When he was about to get some food, he found that the meat had been eaten. Fuck. After saying that, he shouted again, Xiaoya, get the master something to eat. After a while, Xiaoya ran out with a blush on her face. She walked in front of Chu Yuntian and said, there is no meat. Master, do you want to eat something else? Well, just get something to eat, he said casually and sat on the chair next to him. After a while, Xiaoya came over with 2 bowls of noodles and ran to get a few sausages before sitting down. After you finish eating, clean up the room. In addition, don't go to the laboratory. You don't understand the things there and they will hurt you, Chu Yuntian said while eating. Well, okay, Xiaoya replied playfully. After eating, Chu Yuntian returned to his room because he wanted to try whether eating these things would restore the energy in his body. Lying on the bed, he closed his eyes and felt the strange energy emanating from the heart along the blood in his body. After a long time, he helplessly discovered that the energy showed no signs of recovery. Can this only be restored by eating meat? Or must this energy be absorbed from other creatures to recover? Chu Yuntian thought to himself. But now he has no meat. Does he have to go out to find meat to eat? That would be like sending himself to death. Chu Yuntian, who can't be invisible, is no different from ordinary people. Thinking of this, he found that this bullshit invisibility is a world away from Dazuang's infinite strength. At least Dazuang didn't come back from a fight and lie on the ground like a dead dog. Chu Yuntian, who was thinking wildly, suddenly thought of, isn't there a big rat meat in the freezer? If it doesn't work, I'll eat it, but there won't be any problem with this thing, right? I'll know after a test. He showed a sly smile at the corner of his mouth. He walked out of the room, went to the freezer, where the specimens were stored, cut a small piece of rat meat with a scalpel, and then boiled it in a pot, put it on a plate, and walked towards Xiaoya's room. Xiaoya master will give you something good to eat. He pushed open the door, and saw Xiaoya was still reading the books on the female slave rules. Master, why are you here? Xiaoya immediately hid the book behind her, blushing and slightly embarrassed. It's okay, I'll give you something delicious. How does it taste? He handed a finger-sized piece of rat meat to Xiaoya. Where did you get the meat? Didn't I ask you to eat it all last night? Xiaoya asked in confusion. Don't worry about it, just eat it. If I tell you to, if you don't obey, the master will spank you, Chu Yuntian said in a feigned anger. Okay, he picked up the rat meat and put it in his mouth, chewed it for a while, swallowed it down, and said, it tastes okay, but it's a little hard. Oh, that's okay, you can take a good look. The master will come to check the homework in a few days. If you don't learn well, don't want your little butt, Chu Yuntian said jokingly. Ah, that's it. What kind of meat is it? Xiaoya was more and more confused. Read your book, Chu Yuntian said sternly, and walked out of the room. After returning to the room, Chu Yuntian immediately looked at Xiaoya in the next room through the SLR mirror, thinking, she shouldn't mutate, right? At most, she has food poisoning. Seeing Xiaoya was slightly stunned for a while, she picked up the female slave rules and started reading them. Her little face was slightly red, and she was very cute. After reading for about half an hour, there was no abnormality and no signs of food poisoning. He ran over and pushed open Xiaoya's door and said, Xiaoya, how do you feel? Why are you here again? What do you feel? Xiaoya said with a little anger. No, I'm asking you how you feel after eating that piece of meat. Chu Yuntian said like a big bad wolf tempting a lamb. No feeling? What kind of meat is that? Xiaoya asked the same question again. Okay, it's really okay this time, you can see it, Chu Yuntian said, and walked out of the room again. Why is the master so strange today? Didn't he get tired yesterday? Xiaoya whispered to herself. Chu Yuntian walked straight to the freezer. After leaving the room, cut off a palm-sized piece of rat meat, cooked it and brought it to his room. After a slight hesitation, he took a bite. Not long after he finished eating, when he was sitting on the bed with his eyes closed, feeling the mysterious energy in his body, a wonderful scene happened. Chapter 14. Troops enter the city. He only felt a surge of mysterious energy in his body, recovering in an extremely fast way. After sitting quietly for more than half an hour, the mysterious energy in his body was restored to a sufficient state again. He was overjoyed. It seemed that the meat of this evolved creature had such a magical effect. He had to find a way to collect more in the future, so as not to appear in such an embarrassing state of being consumed. He tried to activate the invisible state, and there was no feeling like yesterday. Chu Yuntian walked out of the room again in a good mood. He came to the freezer and collected all the rat meat that had been thrown away before and put it in a body bag to ensure that there would be no problems such as deterioration. After finishing these, he ran to the door of Xiaoya's room again and listened there for a while, only to hear some heavy breathing from inside. He let out a wicked smile from the corner of his mouth, coughed lightly, and pushed the door open and walked in. Why are you here again? Xiaoya seemed very annoyed that he disturbed her study. I'm here to check your homework, she said, and sat on the bed. What are you doing? I haven't learned it well yet. You go out first. As she said that, she shrank to the corner of the bed holding the female slave rules, lowered her head, and didn't dare to look at him. Chu Yuntian smiled jokingly and said, it's okay, if you haven't learned it well, I can teach you. The whole day was spent in this way, training the little lolly. The next day, a huge rumbling sound shook the whole basement. Chu Yuntian suddenly opened his eyes and immediately started to run out. As soon as he ran out of the door, he saw Xiaoya shouting, "Earthquake, master, run." He was about to climb out of the basement while shouting. At this time, he had reacted. This was not an earthquake, but the sound of a huge machine starting. "Come back here," Chu Yuntian shouted sternly. Xiaoya was stunned for a moment, then said anxiously, "Master, hurry up, otherwise the earthquake will bury us underneath." "Have you seen an earthquake?" Chu Yuntian said angrily, and then said, "This is not an earthquake. It seems that a large heavy industrial vehicle passed by from outside. If I guess correctly, it should be a mechanized force entering the city." "Ah, you mean the troops are coming to rescue us?" Xiaoya said excitedly with a little doubt. "They should be here, but whether they will save us is still uncertain. Unless the overall situation is under control, they will not have the heart to save us," Chu Yuntian said lightly. "Aren't they here to save people? Otherwise, why would they drive into the city?" Xiaoya asked in confusion. Chu Yuntian glanced at the silly Xiaoya and said, "You don't understand. Once a major war or disaster occurs, human rights will not be guaranteed." "What do you mean?" Xiaoya said, still confused. He shook his head helplessly and said, "In any case, don't go out. It's not necessarily safer outside now than it was 2 days ago." "Well, then when will we go out?" Xiaoya still asked unwillingly. "You are mine now, just obey my orders. Why do you need to think about anything else?" Chu Yuntian said very forcefully. "Well then," Xiaoya said with a little grievance. "Of course, I will give you one last chance now. Stay or go. If you want to go you can go now. If you go, I will never let you come back. If you don't go, you are still mine. If you disobey my orders like this, your end will be miserable." Chu Yuntian said with a little threat, because he was almost certain that, if you go out now, you will basically die, because the troops and the infected will not give up the attack just because of you, a civilian. Xiaoya thought for a moment, remembering that she didn't seem to have suffered any grievances in the past few days following Chu Yuntian. Although this big brother was a little strong, he saved her after all. The young and inexperienced little girl didn't notice his dark side at all, and then she said in a wronged whisper, "Okay, Xiaoya, listen to the master." Hearing this, he laughed playfully, and then said, "I'll go up to find out the situation. You don't go out. Even if you hear someone coming in, don't go up. You can't go up to see. If you let them take it away, I can't guarantee your safety." "Okay, master, be careful. Xiaoya will definitely not go up, and I won't let others know that I'm here," Xiaoya said obediently. After hearing Xiaoya say this, he climbed up with confidence. When he reached the door, he could clearly hear the sound of mechanized troops and the sound of various guns. He tore off the shorts and short-sleeved shirts that he was only wearing, activated the invisibility, and pushed the door and walked out. He didn't stupidly run to the street to ask the troops for help, but still came to the top floor of the dilapidated community. As soon as he reached the top floor, he saw a shocking scene. The two Type 99 main battle tanks were actually driving side by side on the street, directly crushing the large group of infected people who ran by, without any effort. There were several armored personnel carriers behind them, shooting directly at the infected people, who had escaped the net nearby. Hearing the same dull sound coming from afar, Chu Yuntian thought that the military sub-districts should be preparing to clear the urban area and then station here. No wonder it felt like an earthquake in the morning. These two Type 99 main battle tanks weigh more than 100 tons. It was a face-saving move that they did not collapse the road surface. Just as the two tanks were advancing at full speed, suddenly more than a dozen of the strong infected people seen the day before came running from not far away. Several strong infected people actually tried to directly resist the advance of the tanks. With a boom, the two tanks actually fired an armor-piercing shell at the same time. The strong infected people in front were all blown to pieces, and the ones next to them were also blown to pieces. The tanks rolled over slowly and unstoppably, leaving no one alive wherever they passed. Chu Yuntian was shocked. He had thought about the strength of the troops and knew that it would not be too difficult for the troops to clean up the urban area, but he had never thought it would be so simple. Just imagine how many infected people there were. Weren't they also flesh and blood? Even if you were strong, you could still scratch the steel plate in front of a 51-ton main battle tank. At the same time, he also had some doubts. Why would such a powerful mechanized force be stationed outside the city for so many days without cleaning up the outside of the city? Could it be that the creatures outside have evolved to the point where they can fight against tanks? In fact, he was wrong. The creatures outside the city were not so powerful that the main battle tanks could not kill them with a few shots. It was just that most of the outside of the city had been heavily covered with plants. The tanks that entered could not fully exert their mobility and firepower. Some huge beasts in the forest were also capable of posing a threat to the tanks. Even if they could not cause serious damage, at least they could knock them down. Just as the tanks slowly rolled over, a dozen researchers in chemical protective suits walked down from the armored transport vehicle behind. There were several strong soldiers following behind, each holding an AK-47 with a bayonet, seemingly protecting the researchers. They walked to the strong infected person who was crushed by the tank, and several soldiers used bayonets to directly cut open the infected person's heart, took out the red round bead from it, and then handed it to the researchers wearing chemical protective clothing behind them. Did they already know the function of the red round bead? It must be so, otherwise they wouldn't dig out the heart and take the bead so directly. Chu Yuntian muttered to himself and slowly looked back at the troops. Chapter 15. Taking shortcuts. At the end of the army, there was a group of fully armed soldiers, 5 people in a team, cleaning up the residential areas, shopping malls, etc. They passed by. They killed the infected people when they saw them and notified them to stay on the spot when they saw survivors. Those who disobeyed were shot directly. The team closest to his community had entered another residential building not far away and started searching, but he didn't know that there were so many survivors. He saw many windows open and the people inside were shouting for help outside. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian sneered, looking for death. Just after he said this, he saw a shouting aunt at the window of the 3rd floor, and her throat was cut by the agile infected person he saw the day before yesterday. When the people in the window saw this scene, they immediately closed their windows and dared not shout. But just when he thought that the fully armed team could easily clean up the infected people in the residential building, something strange happened. 5 agile infected people suddenly jumped out of the 2nd floor house. Due to the location restrictions, it was too late when the team members found out. 5 agile infected people jumped directly from above to behind them. As soon as they grabbed them, 2 team members had their hearts pierced. The survival of the remaining 3 people was not due to their quick reaction, but because the 2 dead people found something strange and fired upwards, hitting 3 of them, making them fall farther away from the 3 team members. One of the young soldiers saw this scene and immediately shouted, "Squad leader," and prepared to run over to rescue, but it was too late. The young soldier could only fire several shots at the agile, infected person who dodged quickly, but it did not seem to cause any substantial damage to it. The 5 agile infected people did not want to fight and retreated after one blow, leaving the remaining 3 team members helpless. Only one soldier who was a little older immediately took out the intercom and said, "Team 9 needs support. Several 1st level agile infected people have appeared here. The squad leader has been killed. Please support quickly." After that, the 3 of them leaned back to each other to defend against the agile infected people who might appear around them. After a long stalemate, the agile infected people showed no intention of jumping out. "We will slowly withdraw from here and wait for other teams to come and clean up together," the older soldier said immediately. But just as they were slowly retreating, 5 agile infected people suddenly jumped out. Seeing the target coming out, the 3 of them fired at the same time, but they hesitated because the distance was too close and did not hit the vital parts. This advanced infected person seemed to be somewhat similar to a big rat. As long as you don't hit the head, you won't restrict their movements, and as long as you don't hit the heart, it won't kill them. In an instant, 5 agile infected ran in front of the 3 people. One infected grabbed and stabbed into the stomach of a soldier. Surprisingly, the soldier grabbed the infected with one hand and shouted, "Run." Then he pulled out a high explosive grenade on his body and hugged the infected tightly. With a bang, the soldier was blown to pieces, and the agile infected was also blown to pieces and could not move. The two infected next to him were also blown back several meters by the explosion wave and then hid in the surrounding buildings. The older soldier who called for support was directly stabbed in the cheek by the claws and fell down slowly without saying a word. Seeing this, the young soldier immediately shouted, "Laoli," and shot continuously at the agile infected who had just pulled out the claws. The infected who was shot several times jumped several times and hid in a nearby house. "Come on, if you have the guts, kill me too." The young soldier seemed a little crazy, holding the 95 type in his hand and shooting randomly. The three agile infected who had just hidden in the surrounding buildings jumped out from the second floor one after another. When the team was about to be wiped out, the continuous shooting sound of da da, da da da, saved the young soldier who wanted to die. I saw another 5-man team coming not far away, and the rifles in their hands fired continuously to suppress the several agile infected who wanted to show their heads. A strong middle-aged soldier grabbed the young soldier and said, "Follow us, this situation is not something we can handle, wait for the evolvers to come." After hearing this, the young soldier nodded and followed the 5 people to slowly retreat. At this time, Chu Yuntian, who saw this scene, suddenly had a very bold idea, that is, to sneak over and take back the round bead in the heart of the agile infected who was half dead by the explosion. Thinking of this, he immediately ran downstairs, returned to the basement, took out the scalpel that had been used to dig out the round bead, and walked out. He bent down and slowly approached the place where the battle had just taken place. It was not that he did not want to run, but he did not dare to run with a scalpel in his hand, fearing that he would attract the attention of other people or infected people. When he approached the broken agile infected person, he found another surprise. That was the high explosive grenades on 2 of the 3 soldiers who had just died. He did not dare to take the gun because it was too big. If he wanted to take it, he had to show up and take it and run, but that was too dangerous. He did not think he could outrun those agile infected people, so when he approached the broken agile infected person, he directly used a scalpel to dig open its heart. There was actually a light blue round bead inside. It seemed that the ability was different and the color was different. After getting the round bead, he immediately ran over and took off the high explosive grenades on the waists of the 2 dead soldiers without any hesitation, then bent down and slowly retreated because he saw that not far away, an agile infected person on the 2nd floor was actually looking at this place with his head tilted in confusion. Chu Yuntian slowly moved back at an extremely slow speed, trying to let the outside see that these things seemed to be pulled by something and moving. Crossing a street in this way, he saw that the agile infected person actually jumped down. Without saying a word, he immediately stood up and ran home. Although the distance between the two was not far, it was still closer to his home. When the agile infected person saw 2 grenades and a scalpel flying up, he suddenly accelerated and rushed over. In the corridor at the door of the runway, Chu Yuntian directly threw the grenade and scalpel out, and then hid the blue round bead under a plastic bag next to it, and stood there without daring to move. I saw that the agile infected person actually ran over, scratched the 2 grenades and scalpels with his claws, and then circled around these things twice, before running away in confusion. Seeing the infected person running away, Chu Yuntian breathed a sigh of relief, and slowly walked over to pick up the 2 grenades and scalpels, bent down and retreated to the corridor. As soon as he entered the house, he immediately gasped heavily, showed his figure, locked the door, put on his clothes, took all the harvest, and went down to the basement. When he went down, he saw Xiaoya huddled in a corner. When she saw it was him, Xiaoya immediately ran up and said happily, "Master, you're back." Xiaoya was so scared. "I thought someone else came in." "It's okay. It's not easy for ordinary people to find this basement." He comforted her lightly, and then found a place to put the 2 grenades, and then looked at the light blue round bead. Chapter 16. Robbing the Emperor's Grain. Will this thing be the same as the red round bead? Will it have the speed of the agile infected after using it? Chu Yuntian thought so. After many experiments, it was found that the properties of this light blue round bead and the red round bead are basically the same. It was initially judged that it should be the same thing. Should I try it? But if it works, wouldn't it have 2 abilities? Chu Yuntian said to himself with a little excitement. He prepared the injection in the same way as before and stabbed it. This time, he didn't feel the accelerated heartbeat like the first time. After 4 hours, there was still no change. But when he closed his eyes and felt the energy in his body, he found that the mysterious energy was restored. Does it become a recovery product after evolution? Then it's too extravagant to use this to restore energy. I don't feel much faster than the evolution of beast meat, he said to himself in confusion. Or am I using it wrong? Should I eat it or use other methods? Chu Yuntian thought of this and put it aside directly because he found that even if he found other uses now, there would be no round beads for him to experiment. But where else can I find round beads? Go kill the evolved infected. That was like seeking death. He simply ignored this option because he was no different from an ordinary person without invisibility. The only option left was the army. Remember that the research institute seemed to have loaded a lot of red beads on the armored vehicles. Is it possible to rob one? After thinking for a moment, he rejected it because that thing could not be destroyed by guns. Besides, since the army knew the function of this kind of beads, how could there be no one to protect it? Just when he was struggling to find a good solution and pacing back and forth, he saw 2 high explosive grenades on the table. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. Blow up a fucking car. But can this thing destroy an armored vehicle? I think it's a big deal. Chu Yuntian began to hesitate again. But after thinking about it, he thought that there was no way to try it. If it couldn't be destroyed, he wouldn't rob it. Anyway, he didn't plan to let anyone see him. Thinking of this, he casually took a black garbage bag, put 2 grenades and a scalpel in it, and left the basement. When he walked to the street in stealth, he found that the mechanized troops had already passed through the entire city. Only some teams were cleaning up this building area and some infected people in the mall. At this moment, he suddenly heard the continuous shooting sounds of da-da, da-da-da and bang bang bang. It came from the square not far away. Chu Yuntian carried a black garbage bag and avoided the armed soldiers who would notice him on the street. He came to the square where the battle was taking place. He hid in the corner and saw that it was a team of more than 20 soldiers fighting against more than a dozen agile infected people. He found that these soldiers were different from ordinary soldiers. As long as an agile infected person approached, there would be several soldiers holding bayonets to stop them. If they could not get close, they would stand aside and protect the strong soldiers holding heavy machine guns in the middle. These soldiers could actually fight these agile infected people for 2 rounds without losing the upper hand. And those strong soldiers holding heavy machine guns seemed like toys, and the vibration of recoil could not be seen at all. This should be the evolutionary team of the army. Their strength should not be underestimated. Chu Yuntian on the side secretly praised. After more than 20 minutes, the agile infected were almost wiped out. The soldiers holding heavy machine guns were not only strong, but also had accurate shooting skills. As long as the infected stayed in place for a while, they would be shot in the head or have their limbs broken. Slowly, there were no more infected who could move. At this time, the researcher in protective clothing came up again, collected more than a dozen round beads, closed the password box, and got on a military transport vehicle. One of the soldiers said to the transport vehicle, "You send these bioenergy beads back to the base first, and we will go to inspect the building in front." The soldier in the transport vehicle saluted and said, "Yes, sir," then closed the window and started the car. Chu Yuntian saw this scene and thought to himself, the opportunity has finally come. Seeing that the transport vehicle was going to drive in the direction he was in, he immediately turned around and ran through 2 blocks, not caring whether anyone noticed him. He stopped in front of a building, an old-style neighborhood with shops below and residential buildings above. He ran into a store and dragged the display cabinets with goods directly to the street, blocking the road tightly. After he was done, he stood behind a street lamp nearby because he was not hiding in the invisible state, but to let the street lamp block the black bag and high explosive grenade. After a while, he saw the military transport vehicle coming over. The soldier driving the car saw that there was something blocking the road in front, so he slowly stopped the car, but he didn't mean to get off. He saw 2 soldiers coming down from the cargo hold at the back, holding a 95 type rifle in their hands. One was burly and strong, and the other was thin, but his muscles were tight. It seemed that these two were the escorted evolvers. When Chu Yuntian saw the car stop, he took out the grenade, pulled the safety, and threw it directly under the car. When the two evolver soldiers came down, they heard two booms and the transport vehicle was blown to the ground. The thinner soldier was directly knocked unconscious by the shock. Although the strong soldier was also knocked to the ground by the explosion, he did not seem to be seriously injured. Instead, he took out the walkie-talkie he was carrying and said anxiously, "Transport team here, we have been attacked. Requesting support. Requesting support." Seeing this scene, Chu Yuntian immediately ran to the overturned transport shed and saw several researchers in protective clothing inside. They had been completely killed by the explosion, and one of them was holding the password box in his hand. He came out with the password box and immediately flashed into the store next to him. He saw the strong soldier outside holding a walkie-talkie, saying, "We are the evolutionary team. Where are you attacking? We will support you immediately." Then another anxious voice inside said, "This is the command center. Who attacked the transport team?" The strong soldier said, "I didn't see it. It was just two high explosive grenades that blew up the transport vehicle. It should be done by humans." The voice inside said, "Hurry up and check if the bioenergy beads are still there." The strong soldier heard it and immediately ran to the transport vehicle shed. At this time, Chu Yuntian had already hidden in the store next to him with the password box. "The bioenergy beads have been taken away," the strong soldier said to the walkie-talkie, and the voice inside immediately replied, "The evolutionary team will be there immediately. Search around immediately. There is a tracker on the password box. This batch of energy beads is very important to us. We must find it." "Yes, sir," the strong soldier said, and immediately began to search for clues around. Chu Yuntian, who heard all this, immediately ran into the store and went to a room on the third floor through the staircase. There turned out to be an office inside. When he came here, he was ready to find a way to open the password box and take away the biological energy beads they mentioned. Only now did he know that the name of the round beads was this. After searching for a long time without finding the right tool, Chu Yuntian immediately thought of the rifle in the soldier's hand. If he used it, he would definitely be able to open it quickly. Thinking of this, he put the password box in a conspicuous place in the office, and then went out to find the sturdy soldier. When he came to the first floor, he saw the sturdy soldier holding a walkie-talkie and saying to the inside, "I have entered this store now. Where is the energy bead?" The inside immediately said, "On the third floor, the box is not moving. You can stabilize it and wait for the evolution team to arrive before taking action." "No, as long as I see him, I will fight to get the box back. This is my duty," the sturdy soldier said, and walked upstairs vigilantly. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian immediately returned to the door of the room on the third floor, where the box was placed, put the scalpel on the ground, and squatted down. After waiting for a while, I saw a strong soldier slowly approaching cautiously. Episode 17. The body is hollowed out. "Is it the room in front of me?" the sturdy soldier whispered, and the intercom immediately replied, "It's here. Be careful. That person is likely to be a second level evolver." The sturdy soldier ignored the voice inside, then kicked the door open, pointed his gun at the inside and said, "Don't move." But the scene in front of him made him stunned for a moment, because he saw a password box on the table, but there was no one in the room. Chu Yuntian was waiting for the moment when he was stunned. He picked up the scalpel on the ground, pointed it at the heart of the sturdy soldier and stabbed it, then turned around and immediately let go and retreated out the door. The sturdy soldier was attacked and immediately turned around and fired a few shots. If he hadn't let go and retreated behind the door in advance, it is estimated that they would really die together. The sturdy soldier, who fired several shots in a row without success, immediately said weakly to the intercom, "That person is very fast. He should be a second level evolver." Before he finished speaking, he slowly knelt on the ground. After waiting for a long time, Chu Yuntian stood up and slowly approached the sturdy soldier. He stretched out his hand to hold the scalpel that was deeply inserted into the heart and slashed it hard until he saw a lot of blood gushing out of the heart. Only then did he feel relieved. But what surprised him was that there were traces of surgery on the heart of this soldier. He cut open the chest and saw that it was a heart bypass. However, unlike ordinary heart bypass, there was a container in the middle of the blood vessel that served as the bridge, and it was a biological energy bead. Is this the way the military transformed these evolvers? Chu Yuntian said to himself, then took out the energy bead, picked up the soldier's gun, walked into the room, and fired a few shots at the password box. With a bang, the box finally opened. Seeing the dozen or so energy beads neatly arranged inside, he immediately poured them all into the garbage bag with excitement. But just as he was about to take his things and slip away, he suddenly heard the sound of footsteps coming from outside, and someone shouted, "You block this building, the Evolver team, follow me." Hearing this, Chu Yuntian looked around, and found that there was no place to escape or hide. He was quick-witted and immediately threw the black garbage bag containing the energy beads into the trash can next to him, then fired a few shots at the ventilation duct on the roof, and then flipped over a tall cabinet next to him. With a bang, the door was not kicked open again. The leader was a sturdy young man who was only about 1.7 meters tall, followed by 4 people. As soon as they entered the door, they saw the body of a sturdy soldier on the ground and the broken password box. The leading soldier looked around and found no signs of anyone. He looked up at the broken ventilation duct, waved his hand, and 2 soldiers jumped up. Judging from the hand, they should be agile evolvers. The remaining 2 stood beside the leading young man without moving. The leading young man waited for a while and suddenly said, "Friend, come out. You are so skilled. Why do you want to be an enemy of the army? We came into the city to rescue people, and the things you took away are very important to us. As long as you take them out, I can recommend you to join our evolutionary team," and looked around. Chu Yuntian was shocked when he heard this, thinking that the leader had seen through his invisibility, but then he saw the leading officer looking around and felt relieved. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, seeing that no one appeared, the leading officer frowned, and then a slightly anxious voice suddenly came from the intercom. "Captain, several survivors were found here." "Wait, I'll go over immediately. Don't act rashly," the leading officer said, and turned and walked out of the room. After a long while, Chu Yuntian jumped down from the cabinet, went out to look at the 3 people who had disappeared, and immediately picked up the energy bead in the trash can. He also saw the grenade on the soldier, whose heart he had cut open, picked it up, and put it in the bag, and then ran to the first floor. When he got down to the first floor, he found that there were soldiers with guns and live ammunition outside. Even if he could go out now, he couldn't leave with the garbage bag. It would be too conspicuous. After walking around, he found that all the exits were guarded by soldiers. He found a corner, put the bag down, and waited for them to retreat before leaving. At this time, the officer on the 3rd floor turned back and said as soon as he entered the door, "Someone has been here." A soldier holding a heavy machine gun next to him asked in confusion, "Who? The whole building is surrounded by us. How can someone come in?" The officer said, "Just now I saw that there was a black garbage bag in the trash can, but now it is gone. Someone must have been here. Notify everyone to strictly guard all exits. That person must still be in this building." "Yes, sir." The soldier next to him saluted and ran down. The officer suddenly said, "Friend, those things are really important to us. If we can't find you before dark, we will blow up this building directly. I'll see where you run then." Chu Yuntian couldn't hear these. He hid in the corner for nearly an hour. During this time, he saw a small group of soldiers running upstairs with high explosives twice. He didn't know why, but he had a bad feeling, and didn't plan to wait any longer. Secondly, he felt that his invisibility was almost at its limit. Even if he didn't want these energy beads, he couldn't be caught. But thinking that there were soldiers with live ammunition outside, he didn't know where to start. After thinking hard for a long time, he suddenly thought of a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain. He planned to use the grenade to create some chaos at a door. He didn't plan to kill many people. He just needed to attract the soldiers' attention. But he couldn't throw the grenade out, because then people would know you were still inside. So he set up a small mechanism at a side door. After 2 minutes, the safety of the grenade would be opened, and he ran to the other side door at the opposite corner. After 2 or 3 minutes, there was a sudden boom and the grenade exploded. Chu Yuntian, who was hiding at the door, turned his head to look at the situation of the soldiers outside. He saw several soldiers heard the explosion and ran over. Seeing this opportunity, he immediately picked up the garbage bag and ran behind a trash can next to him. At this moment, the soldiers who had just run over actually ran back again. How could it be so fast? Chu Yuntian thought to himself and put the bag next to the trash can and dared not move again. As long as he was given another chance to take the bag into the corner next to him, everything would be fine. But Chu Yuntian, who was waiting next to him, became more and more anxious because the biological energy in his body was not enough to support his invisibility for long. When he was suffering from insufficient energy, he suddenly saw an agile infected person preparing to attack a guarding soldier, but before he got close, he was shot with holes by several machine guns around him. But it also gave Chu Yuntian a chance. He quickly ran around the corner without stopping, but ran directly in the direction of home, because he could clearly feel the weakness of his body. When he got home, he just wanted to crawl into the basement, when he fell to the ground and lost consciousness. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 18 Fatty Leaves. Chu Yuntian woke up slowly and saw that he was lying on the bed. Xiaoya was sleeping beside him. He gently pushed Xiaoya and said, "How long have I been unconscious?" "Yes, master, you are awake. You have been unconscious for 3 days," Xiaoya said sleepily. "Where is the black garbage bag?" Chu Yuntian said weakly. "Oh, where is it?" He pointed to the garbage bag next to him. Chu Yuntian was relieved to see that the bag was safe and sound and said, "Have you been here to guard me? That day I waited for a long time, but didn't see you come back. When it was almost night, I wanted to sneak up to see you, and I saw you fainted at the door of the basement. I spent a lot of effort to get you down. I was scared at the time and thought you were dead." Woo woo, Xiaoya said and started crying. "Silly girl, I did encounter some problems, but I didn't get hurt. I was just a little weak. Go get something to eat," he said and touched Xiaoya's head. "Yes, master, I'll go now." Xiaoya ran out and brought a bowl of instant noodles in a short while. When Chu Yuntian was about to take the instant noodles, Xiaoya dodged and said, "Master, let me feed you." I'm not that weak yet." Although he said so, he didn't mean to take the bowl. After eating the noodles with Xiaoya's service, he rested for a long time before he felt a little stronger. He walked out of the room and saw Xiaoya cleaning up the dishes, so he said, "Don't do it. Go and rest first. You are tired too. It will be fine soon. You are so weak now. Don't come out." As she said that, she was about to come over to help him. "I just forget it. You don't understand. Go and rest. I have something else to do." Chu Yuntian wanted to say that I just consumed too much biological energy, not that I was seriously injured, but when he thought that she might not even know what biological energy is, he held it back. "Oh, then okay. Don't get tired anymore." After saying that, he walked back to the room. Seeing Xiaoya go back to her room to rest, he slowly walked to the freezer, where the rat corpses were stored, opened the body bag, cut off a palm-sized piece of rat meat, and then cooked it casually, and quickly ate it. After eating the rat meat, he felt that the mysterious energy in his body was recovering, and then he went back to the room to check the bag of energy beads he had robbed. After a careful inspection, there were actually 14, 3 red and 11 light blue. After checking, he put down the bag and began to rest and recover his energy. Chu Yuntian, who was resting with his eyes closed to recover his biological energy, was interrupted by a ringing cell phone. He took out his cell phone and saw that it was Fatty. He picked up the phone and asked, "What's wrong, Fatty?" "Brother Chu, are you okay now?" Fatty greeted. "Don't talk about these nonsense. Let's talk about it directly," Chu Yuntian said with a little impatience. "No, do you still remember what you told me to let me open the heart of the infected person to take a look?" Fatty said. "Remember, how come there is a breakthrough?" Chu Yuntian said lightly. The fat man hesitated for a moment before saying, "Yes, I found that those evolved infected people all have a biological energy bead in their hearts. That energy bead can stimulate the evolution of normal humans and has no side effects. Isn't that good? Chu Yuntian said puzzledly. I just want to thank you for telling me this. In addition, I'm leaving Shishi and transferring to Beijing. Because I discovered the existence of biological energy beads, it is said that I have made great contributions and asked me to work at the Beijing Academy of Sciences. It may be difficult for us to contact each other in the future, said the fat man. It's okay. Beijing should be safer than here. In addition, are you an evolver now? Chu Yuntian asked. I'm already a first level power evolver. I originally wanted to help you change to an evolver, but the army has extremely strict management of energy beads. I don't know. That daring person a few days ago actually robbed a batch of energy beads from the military. Now the management is even stricter. The fat man said embarrassedly. It's okay. You work hard in Beijing. At least don't die, Chu Yuntian said jokingly. The fat man hesitated for a moment and seemed to have made up his mind and said, the helicopter will pick me up in the evening, along with a few other researchers. There is still some time now. Do you have time now? Come to our institute. I have something to give you. What is it? It's so mysterious, Chu Yuntian said puzzled. Come on, you'll know when you get there. Hurry up, I'll wait for you at the door, the fat man said mysteriously. Okay, I'll leave now. Chu Yuntian hung up the phone. After packing up, he took a scalpel and walked out of the house. This time he did not go out in stealth, but walked out openly. When he came to the street, he was surprised to find that there were already 2s and 3s of passers-by outside looking for things in every shop. Since many people died after the virus outbreak, many of these shops were ownerless, but it seemed that there were no useful items in them. It should be that after the troops cleared the infected, they took all the supplies away and stored them together. Otherwise it would not be so clean. Chu Yuntian randomly found a bicycle on the roadside because there were no vehicles on the street and the shared electric vehicles were almost all out of power, not to mention cars. Nowadays, energy is almost as scarce as it is used. Those gasoline can be said to be strategic materials, and it is even more impossible for civilians to use them as a means of transportation. More than half an hour later, Chu Yuntian finally came to the institute where the fat man was. He just looked around and didn't see the fat man. When he was wondering if the fat man was brushing him, he saw the fat man in a white coat running out of the institute. Brother Chu, I finally waited for you. The plane will arrive in a few dozen minutes. Take this and remember to go back and read it. Burn it after reading it. It's very important. The fat man stuffed a file bag into Chu Yuntian's hand very seriously. What is this? Chu Yuntian asked puzzled, and then quickly hid it in his clothes. This is all the information about the evolvers and energy beads in our institute. To thank you, I specially copied a copy for you. Don't let anyone else know about it, otherwise you will be in great trouble and I will be implicated. This is leaking state secrets. The fat man said carefully. Fatty, you are really nice, he said excitedly, hitting the fat man. The fat man looked around and said, let's go quickly. Remember to burn it after reading it. It's curfew at night now. You should go back quickly. Also, if you have the opportunity to come to Beijing again, remember to find me at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Okay, then I'll go first. Take care, Chu Yuntian said, and prepared to ride away. Let's go. Hey, wait, there's this. You can take it too. It won't be useful when I go to Beijing. He took out some bright red and green bills and said, what is this? Chu Yuntian asked. This is a food coupon. This thing can be exchanged for food in the army in the future. Money is no longer useful. Let's go quickly, I have to go back. The fat man said and turned back to enter the institute. Chu Yuntian looked at the bills, all of which were for 100 jin and 50 jin of food. He said to himself, the fat guy is quite generous, and then rode his bike home. Chapter 19 Information. When he got home, it was already dark outside. He went to Xiaoya's room and found that the little girl was still sleeping, so he didn't disturb her. He went to the room and opened the information. There were only 3 sheets of paper in it. He thought that the research institute would have a lot of results, so he checked it carefully. Biological process. According to the research of our institute, all species have entered an unprecedented evolutionary mode. The previous biological process has been completely broken. All existing organisms have a certain probability of becoming a more advanced life form than the same species. In the wild, we found that many species have evolved to varying degrees, and some individuals are particularly powerful. For example, in the north of our city, at the former zoo, our army encountered a brown bear more than 6 meters tall. Its strength has surpassed that of ordinary bears by more than 20 times, and it should belong to a more advanced species. Later, we encountered a green leopard, whose fur color was very deceptive, 2 meters long, with bone spurs growing on the end of its tail, and fangs longer than those of ordinary cats. Its speed exceeded 75 meters per second, and its movements were almost impossible to be caught by the naked eye during the battle. Our army shot it down with heavy losses. The 2 types of creatures are representative, and the rest are not described in detail. After research, both species belong to further evolved species, which we call first-order evolved beasts. We found 2 biological energy beads in the hearts of the 2 species and bought 2. After testing, the energy beads in the 2 organisms are divided into power type and agility type. Experiments have shown that, if blood flows through the energy beads, it will bring out a kind of biological energy from the energy beads. For example, the power type energy beads will bring out the power attribute when blood flows through them. When people move, they will consume the biological energy in the blood and increase their strength. After testing, an energy bead can increase strength by more than 10 times, and has a strong recovery ability. Physical injuries also consume biological energy, and the only fatal part is the heart. Damage to the head will make the body lose the ability to move, but will not kill immediately. The agile energy beads are the same as above, and the recovery ability is slightly reduced. When our army broke through and returned to the city, we encountered several aggressive plants, such as piranha, which is about 2 meters high, has vines, and is flexible and changeable. It will prey on passing creatures. The mouth of the flower is a weak point. The roots are shallow. It is suspected that it has the ability to move. Soldiers who are swallowed will be poisoned and die immediately. No biological energy beads were found in its body. The second type is pitcher plant, a shrub with huge curled leaf barrels that emit a psychedelic smell. Smelling it will temporarily lose reason and automatically jump into the curled leaf barrel in an unconscious state. There is corrosive liquid in the barrel, and it emits a strong smell. The attack range is large. Some people in our army 30 meters away were attacked and have not been eliminated. It is not clear whether there are energy beads. The preliminary judgment is that there are none. The third method. Later, our institute experimented with 2 methods of using biological beads. Through the heart bypass technology, the human body can be transformed, and the energy beads can be placed next to the heart and work together with the heart, so as to realize artificial transformation of evolutionary warriors. Advantages of transformation. Ordinary soldiers can all become first-order evolvers, with slightly lower abilities than natural evolvers, but the gap is not large. Disadvantages of transformation. The success rate is only 70%, and the effects vary. Secondly, the transformed soldiers lose the ability to evolve twice, and cannot become second-order evolvers. Use and recovery of biological energy. Any action that exceeds one's own ability consumes biological energy, and when the biological energy is exhausted, any action beyond one's own ability is lost. Recovery method. First, eat meat. All biological meat has biological energy. Ordinary meat can only restore a small amount of biological energy. Second, the meat of evolved beasts can restore a large amount of biological energy, and the speed is much higher than that of ordinary biological meat. Third, biological energy beads. The high stage can absorb the biological energy beads of the low stage. Each energy bead can quickly replenish the biological energy of the energy bead at the same stage. About the classification of evolutionary stages. The evolutionary stage is exclusive to natural evolvers, and there are only 3 natural evolvers in the military. When our army was stationed outside the city to clean up, we encountered a grey wolf that had the ability to stand, was more than 3 meters tall, had bone spurs growing from the elbows of its front paws, and the bone spurs had the ability to launch with great lethality. After a fierce battle, its combat effectiveness was far higher than that of a first-order power evolver. It was initially judged to be a second-order evolver, and its healing ability was amazing. It was not killed, so no specific information about the second order energy beads can be given. However, the blood samples extracted from the battle showed that the bioenergy content of the second order revolvers was much higher than that of the first order revolvers. According to the judgment, once a creature reaches the second order, it will grow other body parts due to excessive bioenergy. Depending on the species, the parts grown are different and the use is uncertain. Second stage evolution method. According to experiments, if a first order natural evolver is artificially modified, as long as two first order bioenergy beads of the same attribute are connected to the heart at the same time using the heart bypass method, it can achieve advancement. Due to the lack of experimental data, the success rate cannot be given, which should be lower than the first order success rate. The ability of the second order revolver is more than double that of the first order. Note, the second order strength is twice that of the first order strength, and the second order agility is twice that of the first order agility. The second advancement method is evolutionary beast meat. According to tests and research, eating evolutionary beast meat will stimulate the bioenergy beads in the body and produce secondary advancement. According to the growth information of the bioenergy beads, if you eat all evolutionary beast meat every time, it should take 10 months to a year to advance. The third stage advancement method is energy beads. Eating energy beads of the lower stage can also stimulate the human body to advance. Only the second stage can use this method. It takes about 7 days to absorb each energy bead. According to the growth information of the energy beads, about 10 first stage beads can allow the second stage to advance to the third stage. Since it is a second stage, eat the first stage energy beads, and then use the biological energy in the body to assimilate the energy in the first stage energy beads. Fourth stage evolution. Theoretically there is a fourth stage evolution. Since there are no fourth stage evolutionists in human beings now, it is impossible to give data. It should be similar to the third stage. If you have two third stage evolution beads, you should be able to artificially transform a fourth stage warrior. According to theoretical judgment, there should be more advancement possibilities after the fourth stage. Because there is no example to prove it, it is only in the hypothetical stage. The use and growth of second stage mutant limbs. According to the physical data of our arm is first second stage evolutionist, the extra limbs grown by the second stage evolutionist can input biological energy, which can greatly improve its killing and protection capabilities in battle. For example, our arm is first second order evolved hand knife is located at the wrist, 30 centimeters long, and extremely sharp. After testing, if biological energy is input, the strength is higher than that of ordinary alloys, and it does not have the ability to fire. We call it a biological weapon. Biological weapons cannot be selected by humans, and not all superfluous limbs can be used as weapons. For example, when our army was cleaning up a large gas station outside the city, an invertebrate reptile, more than 20 meters long, with 4 legs, resembled a snake, and had great strength. It should be a second order power type mutant beast. The scales on its body are extremely hard, and ordinary thermal weapons cannot cause damage. Our army used anti-tank sniper rifles to hit it more than 10 times, but missed the vital points, allowing it to escape. We did not see its biological weapons. After judgment, the 4 legs should be superfluous limbs evolved from the second order. Damage and regrowth of biological weapons. Experiments have shown that, if biological weapons are destroyed, a large amount of biological energy will be lost immediately, and they will only slowly grow again when the biological energy is full. Chu Yuntian saw this, and felt that the research institute didn't know much more than him. However, this advancement was indeed beyond his expectation. He only heard the leader say it when he robbed the batch of energy beads, but he didn't know what it meant at that time. If that's the case, then he also lost the possibility of advancement. Let's not talk about whether his evolution was artificially created. He only saw one of the transparent biological beads he used, and it was seen in the stomach of a big rat. It shouldn't be grown by the big rat itself, but should be left after eating something else. If he uses 2 evolution beads with other attributes, is it possible to have a second ability? Or can he only hide like this for the rest of his life? There is nothing about this in the information. It seems that the group of researchers is conservative enough. You can't know all these things by trying a few people. It seems that Chu Yuntian can only experiment slowly with the remaining unclear things. After reading it several times and feeling that he remembered it completely, he took out a lighter and burned the information completely. He lay on the bed thinking about how to experiment with the ideas in his mind and slowly fell asleep while thinking. Chapter 20 Xiaoya's Evolution. When he woke up the next day and walked out of the room, he saw Xiaoya making food. "What are you cooking? It smells so good," he asked jokingly. "Oh master, you're awake. You can eat soon." "I'm frying sausages," Xiaoya said cutely. Chu Yuntian sat on the chair and looked at Xiaoya and said, "Come over when you're done. I have something to tell you." "Okay," Xiaoya replied and continued to work. After a while, Xiaoya came over with a few slices of bread and fried sausages and said, "What's the matter?" Then she put the food on the table. "Xiaoya, let me ask you, what do you think of this virus that broke out among humans?" Chu Yuntian said with a little seriousness. "I don't have any opinion. It should be some virus in nature that humans don't know about. I don't have much education and I don't know these things. Why are you suddenly asking this?" Xiaoya asked incomprehensibly. After hearing this, Chu Yuntian smiled helplessly and said, "Haha, Xiaoya, let me tell you this. There are people out there who have evolved. That is, they have become very powerful, very strong, and can lift things weighing thousands of pounds. Some are so fast that your eyes can't even keep up with their speed." Are people out there so powerful now?" Xiaoya said in shock. "Not all of them, but a small number of them," he corrected. Xiaoya thought about it and said excitedly, "Then can we go out? Those people are so powerful, can't they protect us?" "You are too naive. Not only will they not protect you, they may also eat you." Chu Yuntian threatened her. What should we do then?" Xiaoya recovered her worry and said, "I now have a way to turn you into an evolver, but it's a little dangerous, so I want to ask if you dare." He thought about it and said these words. "Can you become so powerful? Then I can protect the master. Then we will go out. If there are any bold guys who dare to come, Xiaoya will kill them," Xiaoya said excitedly without even thinking about the danger. "I can be sure of this. You will become so powerful." Chu Yuntian said affirmatively. "That's great. Let's do it after we finish eating." "How should I do it?" Xiaoya said excitedly. "You don't have to do anything. Just listen to me," Chu Yuntian replied lightly. After the two finished breakfast, Chu Yuntian drew some blood from Xiaoya and then asked her to go back to the room and wait. He waited until he used the strength energy bead to make the injection before calling Xiaoya out. It was not that he didn't want to use the agility energy bead, but he was going to let Xiaoya use the agility energy bead when she reached the second level. Otherwise he couldn't test whether the two attributes could be used together. After Xiaoya walked in, he said to her, "You may feel a little uncomfortable for a while. You should be fine if you hold on for a while." "Yeah." Xiaoya nodded firmly. Chu Yuntian first looked at her, then asked her to lie on the dissection table, and then pierced her with a needle. After the injection, Chu Yuntian stood by and watched Xiaoya. After a while, he saw sweat oozing from her forehead, and then she slowly fainted. It was already evening when Xiaoya woke up. As soon as she woke up, she saw Chu Yuntian holding a piece of unknown meat waiting for her. "You're awake. Are you hungry? Eat this." Chu Yuntian put the rat meat next to her and said, "Master, did I succeed?" "How do you know I'm hungry?" Xiaoya asked in succession. "It should be successful. I've done such experiments before, so I know you'll be hungry. Hurry up and eat it to test your current strength." Chu Yuntian said calmly. "Well," she said, picking up the palm-sized rat meat and eating it. After she finished eating, she waited for a while, and Chu Yuntian handed her an arm strength tester and said, "Here, test your current strength. Pull hard." Xiaoya took the arm strength tester, and she pulled it hard, and the tester was full. Xiaoya looked at her hands with an unbelievable look. "This arm strength test area is 400 kilograms. It doesn't look like you've put in much effort. Your current strength should be over 400 kilograms. Chu Yuntian said calmly. "Really? Am I so powerful now?" Xiaoya pulled the arm trainer again in disbelief. "Take a rest for 2 days first, and I'll let you advance again in 2 days. Chu Yuntian said thoughtfully. "Really? Can I become even more powerful?" "Master, I love you so much," Xiaoya said, hugging him and kissing him. Chu Yuntian looked at Xiaoya hanging on him, and a sly smile rose from his mouth. He carried Xiaoya directly to the room, threw her on the bed, and then lay on top of her. Looking at Xiaoya's cute little face, he said mischievously, "Why, do you want to pledge yourself to me?" Xiaoya, who was pressed under him, just resisted slightly and said, "I didn't." After that, she blushed and dared not speak. Chu Yuntian looked at the shy Xiaoya and slowly lowered his head to kiss his tender red lips. Yeah, Xiaoya resisted at first, and then indulged in this wonderful feeling. Looking at Xiaoya, whose face had turned red all the way to her neck, Chu Yuntian smiled mischievously and said, "Little girl, come and check your homework for the master." Then he reached out and took off her clothes. Xiaoya shyly said, "Master, this is my first time, please be gentle." Hearing this, Chu Yuntian felt his blood boiling, and he quickly took off his clothes and pressed on her. After the love-making, only a long gasp was heard, and then calm returned. Chu Yuntian looked at Xiaoya, who was a little shy, in his arms and said, "You can only follow me in this life." "Okay," Xiaoya whispered softly. Xiaoya no longer has any relatives. Xiaoya belongs to the master in this life. Then she slowly fell asleep. Chapter 21: Xiaoya's advancement. After 3 days of inseparable life, Xiaoya, who had become a power evolver, recovered much faster than ordinary people. After trying all kinds of postures and degrees under the training of Chu Yuntian, the bastard, he gave up bullying this cute little girl. In the morning, Chu Yuntian slowly got up from the bed. Seeing that Xiaoya, who was harmed by him last night, was still sleeping soundly, he got up and made some food casually and cooked 2 pieces of rat meat. After it was done, he prepared to go to the room to call Xiaoya. When he walked into the door, he saw that Xiaoya had woken up and was hiding in the quilt, looking at him with 2 big eyes. "Little lazy pig, get up. I made you delicious food. Well, did the master make it himself?" Xiaoya said mischievously. "Nonsense, is there a third person here?" Chu Yuntian pretended to be angry. "Then you go out first. I'll go out after I get dressed," Xiaoya said timidly. "Oh, you are still shy. What part of you haven't I seen?" he said jokingly. "Oh master, please go out first. I'm afraid you won't be able to bear it and come to bully me after seeing this," Xiaoya said with a red face. Ha 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 ha. Chu Yuntian laughed heartily and walked out. Sitting at the dining table, after a while, he saw Xiaoya still wearing the shorts and suspenders coming out. Chu Yuntian said, "When I have time, I'll go out and find you some clothes, so you don't have to wear this all the time." Xiaoya, who was sitting next to him, said excitedly, "Really? When will the master take me?" Xiaoya hasn't bought new clothes for a long time. "Don't worry, eat first. After dinner, I'll try to let you advance again. If successful, we'll go out and find you beautiful clothes to wear." Chu Yuntian coaxed. Yeah, Xiaoya nodded happily. After finishing the meal, they made the agility injection according to the previous method, and then called Xiaoya and said to her solemnly, "This experiment is very important. It concerns the future of both of us. If it succeeds, no one in this city will be your opponent. If it fails, your life may be in danger, and I will completely lose the hope of rapid advancement. You know, well, Xiaoya will definitely not let the master down." She nodded solemnly. "Okay, come and lie down. Since you are now first level evolver, I will use this to tie you up first to prevent you from struggling and hurting me." Then she took out a few corsets. Well, Xiaoya listens to the master, and then she lay on the dissection table. After everything was done, Chu Yuntian pierced Xiaoya's slender arm and waited for the blood with 2 agility beads to be slowly injected into Xiaoya's body. Suddenly, Xiaoya had a violent spasm, and it took a long time for her to slowly calm down. Chu Yuntian did not go anywhere, but stood aside and looked at the cute little girl on the dissection table nervously, praying in his heart that she must succeed. Seeing the blood vessels in Xiaoya's body moving around under her skin like earthworms, he became more and more anxious. He thought she would not explode and die. That would be a loss of both the wife and the army. 4 or 5 hours later, Xiaoya woke up slowly, but the first thing she did when she woke up was to say she was hungry. It seemed that she was mentally sound, but the strange thing was that she had just eaten rat meat and other things. How could she be hungry so soon? Since they had been doing physical labor for the past 3 days, the rat meat had been almost consumed by the two of them. He took out the last big piece of rat meat, cooked it, and brought it to Xiaoya, and asked with concern, "How do you feel now?" After Xiaoya finished eating the last bit of rat meat, she closed her eyes and felt it for a while and said, "I don't feel anything, but I feel that the energy seems to have more than doubled." "Then try your strength and speed now," Chu Yuntian said anxiously. Xiaoya got up and ran 2 laps. Her speed was indeed much faster, almost the same as that of a first level agile evolver. She tried her strength again, but it seemed that there was no change. But what puzzled Chu Yuntian was why the speed was faster instead of the second level strength or the second level agility. No wonder the fat man's information didn't mention what would happen if he used energy beads of different attributes. If you look at it this way, it would be a big loss. Imagine that if a second level agile person faced a first level strength and a first level agility, then this dual attribute person could not attack the second level agile person. The second level strength was the same as above, and it could not cause any damage. And if you continue to calculate like this, if you want to advance to the third level, then your ability is only equivalent to that of others at the second level, but the price you have to pay is the same. But this kind of advancement will always have an end. If you use energy beads of different attributes, it is equivalent to you always being one stage ahead of others. This price is too high. But one thing is certain, that is, it is not that artificially modified warriors cannot advance, but that the energy beads must be placed in the heart position. Otherwise, even if you perform surgery to place a few energy beads, the blood is still equivalent to only flowing through one. After thinking for a long time, Chu Yuntian finally felt that he should also advance to the agile level, because his speed and invisibility can be said to be a perfect combination. Even if the cost is high, it is better than shrinking and avoiding all the time. It is better to be one level lower forever. He made the injection according to the previous method, and then told Xiaoya, "I will follow this method to let myself advance, but when the time comes, you have to control me. You are now at the second level. Although your ability belongs to the first level, you can control me." "Well, master, don't worry, Xiaoya will definitely not let the master get into trouble." She nodded firmly and agreed. After getting ready, Chu Yuntian directly stabbed him with a needle. After the agility potion was injected, he did not have a violent reaction. He only felt that the blood flow rate was much faster. After persisting for a while, he slowly fell asleep. When he woke up, he found that Xiaoya was still holding his hands beside him, but he did not feel that his energy was consumed as soon as he woke up like Xiaoya did. I don't know if there was a problem or if his advancement was different from Xiaoya's. When Xiaoya saw him wake up, she immediately asked with concern, "Master, are you okay? You didn't struggle too much just now, so I didn't hold you hard." "I'm fine. How long was I unconscious?" Chu Yuntian sat up and asked. "Only an hour," Xiaoya replied. "Oh, why did I advance so quickly?" Chu Yuntian muttered to himself, and then said, "Okay, I'm fine. You must be tired after working for so long. Let's go and have a rest." "Well, master, when can we go out? Xiaoya doesn't want to stay in this basement anymore," Xiaoya asked expectantly. Chu Yuntian thought for a moment and said, "We can go out soon." Chapter 22 Local Powers. Chu Yuntian stretched himself after a night's sleep, feeling refreshed. His body had reached its peak condition. Xiaoya opened her eyes beside him and looked at him sleepily. "What, did I wake you up?" Chu Yuntian said, touching Xiaoya's cute little nose. "No, I woke up a long time ago," Xiaoya said angrily, opening her mouth to bite Chu Yuntian's finger. "Little rascal, you dare to bite me," Chu Yuntian said, pretending to be angry. "Lululu," Xiaoya made a face and got into the quilt. Chu Yuntian smiled faintly, thinking, "Little girl, there were no problems in the 2 experiments, one with rat meat and one with the second level. If there was a problem in one of them, I'm afraid our fate would stop here. You are lucky. Since you are so lucky, I will let you follow me all the time. I hope your luck can be passed on to me." Thinking of this, he got up and got out of bed. Just as he put on his clothes, Xiaoya popped her head out and said, "Where are you going? Don't you want me to get up?" You didn't have sex with me last night, and you want me to make up for it in the morning? Chu Yuntian said jokingly. No way, master, you bad guy. After saying that, he got into the bed again. I'm going out today to find out the situation outside. If there is no big problem, we can go out together tomorrow, and we don't have to hide in this basement anymore, Chu Yuntian explained. I want to go too. I'm very powerful now. Xiaoya heard that he was going out and immediately sat up, completely ignoring her naked upper body and the jumping little white rabbits. Chu Yuntian looked at her, who suddenly got up and smiled evilly. Xiaoya shuddered when she saw this smile, and then she realized that she was naked. She shrank back with a sound of R and said, "Don't look, go away." After that, her eyes rolled around, and she didn't know what bad things she was thinking. Chu Yuntian laughed happily and left the room. In fact, he was going to go out and find some evolutionary beast meat because the big rat had been eaten by the two of them, and he didn't want to wait for them to get injured when they went out or to consume too much energy when they came back without evolutionary beast meat to replenish biological energy. He took a scalpel and walked out of the house. He didn't activate the invisibility ability because he was not going to do anything bad, just a casual walk in the city to see if there was anything that could make him a fortune. Chu Yuntian walked out of the house and saw that there was no one around. He jumped to the second floor of the residential building with one leap and reached the roof with 3 or 2 leaps. Standing on the roof, he felt refreshed. This is a real advanced person. This speed and jumping power are really irresistible. After thinking for a while, he still felt that the richest people in the city were the army. Even if someone else had something, it was just some bread, instant noodles and other ordinary food, which was not what he needed. Looking around, he planned to go to the research institute first. If there were evolved beasts there, he would not have to look for the army. He was different now. He jumped between some shorter buildings and soon came to the roof of a residential building next to the research institute. Looking at the people coming and going in the courtyard of the institute and the soldiers standing guard at the door, Chu Yuntian felt that there should be something going on. After secretly observing for a long time on the roof, he did not see any vehicles pulling the evolutionary beasts in or out. When Chu Yuntian, who was a little impatient, was about to find out where the next unit was stationed, he saw a military transport vehicle coming from a distance. When the transport vehicle turned into the institute, he saw the limbs of a huge creature from a corner of the carport. He was sure that this must be the body of the evolutionary beast transported in from outside the city. It should be sent here for a search, to take away the biological beads, and then transported back to the troops as food. When the transport vehicle stopped and the carport was opened, Chu Yuntian saw that it was actually an evolutionary wild boar. It looked like it weighed about 10 tons. This was not a pig, it was simply an elephant. After watching them get the wild boar corpse off the car and enter a huge room, they could no longer see it. It should be doing some research. After 4 or 5 hours, they finally got the wild boar carcass out. It looked like they had finished their research. However, this place was not suitable for them to start with. He could not take away such a big thing, but he could still find a way to get a few dozen kilograms of meat. Seeing them loading the car and then leaving the institute, Chu Yuntian immediately followed them. He was not stupid enough to chase the car on the road, but he just jumped around in the building, trying not to be discovered by the people on the ground. Not far away, he found that they entered a huge air raid shelter. There were 2 soldiers guarding outside. It seemed that this should be the base of the current troops. Chu Yuntian, who could not follow them, could only watch from a distance. After thinking for a moment, he turned around and left. It was not that he was ready to give up, but that he was going to come back at night and investigate the situation of the base at that time. After knowing the specific location, it couldn't run away anyway, so there was no rush. Just when Chu Yuntian was about to go back, he had just turned a few corners and saw 2 ruffian-like young men blocking his way. They were holding machetes, sticks and other tools in their hands, and they looked like they were not friendly. "My friend, take out your belongings and go your separate ways, or we brothers will not be polite," one of the young men said, waving the machete in his hand. Chu Yuntian was a little annoyed. How dare a bug or fly come out to rob? Without saying anything, He flashed in front of the young man who was talking and put the scalpel on his neck. "Go Evolver," another young man said in shock, and began to slowly retreat. The subdued young man said seriously, "Brother, don't be impulsive. We are Brother Wenny's subordinates. Brother Wenny is also an Evolver. We don't recognize the great man. Please let us go." "Oh, Brother Wenny? What's his full name?" Chu Yuntian was just about to take action, but stopped when he heard the young man's words. "Brother, our boss is Chan Wenny. How do you know him?" Seeing that Chu Yuntian did not take action and asked questions, the gangster thought that they knew each other and was ready to get close to him. "I don't know him, but I'm interested in meeting him. Come on, take me to meet your brother Wenny." He put away the scalpel and kicked the young thug. Instead of getting angry, the thug smiled and said, "Please come in, big brother. Our brother Wenny is in the building not far away." He walked towards a building a few streets away. "Is your brother Wenny also an Evolver?" Chu Yuntian asked as he followed him. "Yes, our brother Wenny is a natural Evolver. The troops are all polite to our brother Wenny," the thug said with some pride, as if he himself was a natural Evolver. After walking 2 blocks and arriving in front of the building, Chu Yuntian asked, "How many of your people are in there? Are there other Evolvers?" He didn't want to be caught in a trap when he was originally planning to go in and get to know them. "There is only one Evolver, Brother Wenny. There are thousands of people inside, but there are women and children, and they are all under the care of our brother Wenny." He walked into the building. Chapter 23, Night Visit to the Military Camp. As soon as he entered the building, he saw the sturdy young man who had robbed him last time standing at the front of the crowd not far away. "It's you? It's you?" the 2 colleagues asked in surprise. The thug next to him said in confusion, "Brother Wenny, do you know each other? We have met once." Then he said to Chu Yuntian, "Brother, what are you doing here today?" Chu Yuntian also said with some ruffian spirit, "Brother Chan Wenny, right? It seems that you knew I was coming a long time ago and greeted me in person. I have no other intentions for coming here today. I just want to make a good relationship with you, Brother Wenny, so that no one will rob me every time I go out." Chan Wenny looked at the thug who ran over and said angrily, "Waste, who the hell told you to do that kind of thing again? I will deal with you later." After that, he changed his face and said to Chu Yuntian kindly, "Brother, the people below are ignorant. I promise I won't do it again in the future." "That's good." He threw a piece of paper over and said, "I'm not here to blame. I said I came to make a good relationship, but I didn't plan to do anything. Take this, it's my mobile phone number. You can still find me if you have something in the future." "Ah, find you for something?" Chan Wenny said puzzled, thinking in his heart, "What do I have to find you for? We should just keep out of each other's way." "Yes, for example, teaming up to fight a monster, secretly killing someone, and so on. I'm a lone man, not as powerful as you, Brother Chan Wenny, so of course I'm prepared to get close to you," Chu Yuntian said lightly, and his face did not show any intention of getting close to you. Chan Wenny was very puzzled when he heard this and thought to himself, "I heard from the man who ran back that he is also an Evolver and he came to me to make friends for no reason. I wonder what his intention is?" Although he couldn't figure it out, he could still save face, so he asked casually, "Oh, I don't know what your name is, brother." "Chu Yuntian," he said lightly, and was about to leave because he felt that it was enough as long as the relationship was not too bad, and with his identity as an Evolver, he believed that Chan Wenny would not trouble him for no reason. "Brother Chu, since you are here, why don't you have a meal together?" After saying this, he was ready to step forward to keep him. Chu Yuntian immediately stretched out his hand to stop him and said, "You're welcome. Seeing that Brother Chan Wenny is so busy, I won't bother you." After that, he walked out of the building and disappeared between the tall buildings with a few leaps. "This person has evolved to a high level," Chan Wenny said to himself lightly, and the younger brother next to him immediately said, "Brother, do you see? Is he a friend or an enemy? I remember that Xiao Wang, and I met him when the fog was still heavy. At that time, he could directly point a gun at us. I think he was a very decisive person. Now he has become an Evolver, and he is even more of an ale. Whether it is a friend or an enemy, we don't need to provoke him," Chan Wenny said, and walked into the building. The rest of the people looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Chu Yuntian, who had left the building, saw that the sky had dimmed, so he ran towards the military base. When he came to the huge air raid shelter, where the military base was located, he saw that there were still 2 soldiers guarding the entrance of the cave. Chu Yuntian waited for a few more hours, until it was completely dark, and then put the clothes in a more hidden room, and then walked over invisibly. I walked into the air raid shelter, walked around, found a place with lights on and sneaked over. As soon as I approached the room, I heard someone inside say, "Political Commissar Han, let's start gathering workers to build the city wall of the gathering place tomorrow. The large amount of construction materials we found on this side must be used immediately. Yes, Commander Wang, I will issue a decree tomorrow. We must let the people have work to do and be able to eat enough." Another voice said, "Take out all the ordinary food that is not easy to preserve. It's better to eat it than to spoil it. Then use these as wages." This should be what the Commander Wang and that person said. In addition, we must quickly find new alternative foods. Now the main crops such as wheat and corn have all mutated and cannot be eaten. Although there are a lot of grain reserves in China, most of them are these. The person who said this should be Political Commissar Han. Another voice said, "I will let the evolutionary team continue to go out of the city to hunt. Evolutionary beast meat is never enough. The team members consume hundreds of kilograms of food in a few days. It's up to you to find new food to replace it. Hey, I will find a way to organize people to go outside the city to find new food that can be replaced tomorrow. These processed foods can't last long." Han Zhengli said helplessly. "Yes, it will become more and more difficult. Oh, by the way, I have to send a few people to guard the kitchen to prevent any accidents. There can't be any mistakes with this evolutionary beast meat." After speaking, the sound of the door opening was heard, and a man with slightly dark skin and tall stature walked out from inside. This should be the Commander Wang. "I'll make arrangements. Han Zhengli, take a rest first," Commander Wang said to the room and walked away. Chu Yuntian heard this and slowly followed him. He knew that this man should be going to the place where the evolutionary wild boar was released. After turning a few corners, I saw Commander Wang actually came to a military camp. He walked in and said something. Soon, 2 soldiers with guns came out and ran towards a place. This time, Chu Yuntian followed the 2 soldiers. Soon, he saw them come to a door and stood there. This should be the place where the evolved wild boar is stored, Chu Yuntian thought, and prepared to find a way to go in and check it out. After walking around, he found a small window in the corner, only half a meter in size and more than 2 meters above the ground. Chu Yuntian jumped lightly and grabbed the windowsill with one hand. He slowly opened the window and secretly looked inside. Then, with the light outside, he saw only a kitchen and did not see any evolved wild boar. "Isn't it here?" Chu Yuntian whispered to himself, then turned over and jumped in. After searching for a long time, he found that there was a huge cold storage room on one side of the kitchen, where the evolved wild boar was thrown. How did they get in? Such a big wild boar can't get in through that door at all. Chu Yuntian was very confused. What he didn't know was that there was a big iron gate in another corner, big enough for military transport vehicles to enter Chengdu. He didn't care so much. He directly found a big kitchen knife, cut off a pig leg, and carried it to quietly leave. But thinking that there were still people guarding outside, it seemed that he could only kill the guards first before leaving. He jumped out of the window along the same route, and then quietly approached the 2 guarding soldiers with a scalpel. According to his current speed, as long as he moved fast enough, he could knock the 2 down without making any sound. In addition, the light was dim, so even if he approached with a scalpel, it would not be easy to be discovered with a small scalpel suspended in the air. He stopped at the corner of the wall 2 meters away from the guarding soldiers, and then exerted force with his feet, instantly cutting off the necks of the 2. He opened the door and walked into the kitchen, then carried the huge pig leg and walked out. If he was not an evolver now, he might not be able to carry such a big pig leg and walk briskly. This pig leg is estimated to be hundreds of pounds, enough for Xiaoya and the others to eat for a week. Hiding all the way, he came to the entrance of the huge air raid shelter and saw 2 soldiers still standing there dutifully. Without saying a word, Chu Yuntian put down the big pig leg, then exerted force with his feet and the scalpel flashed, cutting the throats of the two soldiers on guard, and blood spurted out. Without any hesitation, Chu Yuntian immediately went back and picked up the pig leg, and after a few leaps, he disappeared into the vast night. Chapter 24 Taking to the streets. Not long after Chu Yuntian ran out, he heard the alarm from the army. He ignored it, went to the place where he hid his clothes, put on his clothes, and then ran straight to his home. When he returned home, he found Xiaoya was still waiting for him. "Master, why did you come back just now?" Xiaoya was so worried. Xiaoya ran over anxiously and said, "Look what good things I brought you." Then she threw the big pig leg off her shoulder. "Where did you get it from?" "It's so big," Xiaoya said in surprise. "This thing is the evolutionary beast meat. We will eat this in the future. It can quickly restore the biological energy in the body." Chu Yuntian only told Xiaoya about the evolutionary beast meat now. "Oh, you ran all day just for this?" Xiaoya seemed to be more worried about his safety and didn't seem to be interested in these evolutionary beast meats. "Forget it, you don't understand. I'll go wash up and let's take a rest. Tomorrow I'll take you out to find nice clothes," Chu Yuntian said, and threw the big pig leg into the freezer. Xiaoya said excitedly, "Really? Shall we go out tomorrow?" "Well, little girl, are you feeling suffocated here?" Chu Yuntian walked over and pinched Xiaoya's face. Xiaoya laughed and hugged him, kissing him on the face. "I'll go take a shower first. You go to bed and get naked and wait for me," Chu Yuntian said jokingly, patting Xiaoya's perky little butt. Xiaoya hit Chu Yuntian with her pink fist, then ran back to the room with a red face. When he woke up the next day, he found that Xiaoya was already dressed and was looking at him with her cute big eyes. "You were so tired last night and you got up so early today." He stretched out his hand and pulled Xiaoya close to his arms. "Stop it, master. You said you would take me out to buy beautiful clothes today. Hurry up and get up." Xiaoya broke free and urged. Chu Yuntian shook his head helplessly. Women, their IQ drops to 0 when they hear about clothes. After getting dressed, he took Xiaoya out of the house and walked openly on the street. Seeing all kinds of ragged people running towards the North District, he stopped one person and asked, "Hey, why are you all running here?" The ragged man struggled for a while, but couldn't get away, so he said impatiently, "The North District is recruiting workers to build a wall. They give 10 kilograms of food coupons a day. Many people are ready to sign up." Chu Yuntian let him go and said, "Oh, let's go." The ragged man looked at him, and without saying a word, he continued to run towards the army. Chu Yuntian took Xiaoya around for a long time before he found that the stores where he used to buy clothes and some shopping malls were almost empty. There was no clothes left, let alone food. It should be that the army took them all away, otherwise where would the army get so many supplies and issue food coupons? It seems that the North District is completely finished. The only way is to look for it in the East District or the West District. The army should not search so thoroughly. Walking and looking at the miserable scenes on the street, Xiaoya tried to give them some food many times, but was stopped by Chu Yuntian. He said to her, "You can take care of these people. If you take care of one of them, the rest will come to you. Are you going to leave?" Xiaoya didn't say anything, but looked at the people who were begging and searching for food with some sympathy, and followed Chu Yuntian slowly. As soon as they walked out of the North District, they were stopped by a group of hooligans. The hooligans who seemed to be the leader looked at the two of them and said arrogantly, "Where are you from? You don't look like those starving civilians. What are you doing in our East District?" "Your East District, haha." Chu Yuntian smiled provocatively. The leading thug saw this and immediately waved his hand. The dozen or so thugs behind him surrounded him and shouted, "This is the base of Master Marsan. If you have nothing to do, get out. If you have something to do, you must report to Master Marsan." Chu Yuntian looked at the group of thugs surrounding him and said to Xiaoya, "Why don't you try and see how powerful you are now?" "Me? Can I?" Xiaoya said with a slightly frightened tone, and then shrank behind Chu Yuntian. "Fuck, what do you mean, kid? Do it." The leading thug waved his hand and prepared to let the group of people take action. "Go ahead, I'm here for you," Chu Yuntian said, and actually pushed Xiaoya out. Xiaoya was about to hit a thug in front of her. Xiaoya screamed "Ah!" and punched the thug more than 10 meters away. Xiaoya was stunned for a moment, and then she found some confidence when she saw that the person in front of her had already flown far away. She looked back at Chu Yuntian and saw that Chu Yuntian nodded to her. Xiaoya then quickly ran to the group of hooligans who were still in surprise and knocked them all down with 3 punches and 2 kicks, leaving only the leader standing there in a daze. Chu Yuntian walked over and grabbed the collar of the leader and asked, "Master Ma-san, right?" The leader immediately begged for mercy. Brother, I was wrong. I didn't know that you two were evolvers. I thought that people from other districts came to search for supplies. I didn't recognize the real master." He slapped himself in the face. "I'm asking you, who is Master Ma-san, and how many people are under his command?" Chu Yuntian said impatiently, throwing the leader to the ground. "Brother, what are you going to do?" The leader thought Chu Yuntian was going to attack Master Ma-san when he heard this, and he broke into a cold sweat. "Why are you talking so much nonsense? I just want to get to know Master Ma-san, isn't that okay?" Chu Yuntian reluctantly explained. The leading thugs put their minds at ease after hearing this, and said tremblingly, "Master Ma-san is the boss of the East District, and he is also an evolver. He has 2 evolvers under him, one is Wu Dongsheng and the other is Chen Qi. The entire East District is full of his people. When the troops cleaned up the East District, they did not take away all the supplies here. This was also the condition that Master Ma-san negotiated with the troops. It seems that this Master Ma-san is a big shot." Chu Yuntian thought to himself and said, "Where is your base? Take me to meet your Master Ma-san." "Okay, you two follow me." The leading thugs walked towards the most luxurious community in the entire East District. When they arrived at the door of a 3-story villa, the leading thugs said, "Master Ma-san is inside. How about I go and report it?" "Go ahead, hurry up, I don't have so much time to wait," Chu Yuntian said lightly. Chapter 25 Chang Wen's phone call. After a while, a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s came out with 3 people, one of whom was the leading gangster. The gangster said respectfully, "Master-san, these 2 are the ones." The middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s nodded and walked over. "My 2 friends, why are you here, Ma-san?" The middle-aged man said this to Chu Yuntian and the others politely. "Master Ma-san, right? Nothing much, just out for a walk, to make friends with Master-san, and to find 2 sets of clothes for my Xiaoya," Chu Yuntian said with a bit of ruffian. "Oh, it's a little unreasonable that a friend hurt more than a dozen of my brothers for such a small matter." Ma-san's tone suddenly turned cold, and then he waved his hand, and a short but strong man came out from behind. "Haha, Master Ma-san, are you going to test me?" After saying that, Chu Yuntian patted Xiaoya on the shoulder, and Xiaoya also understood and walked out. It's not that he didn't want to fight, but he knew that Xiaoya was much stronger than him now. "You're joking, little friend. You have to give an explanation to your subordinates," Ma-san said in a kind tone again, but he didn't seem to stop the short young man. Chu Yuntian heard this, patted Xiaoya's shoulder lightly, and whispered in her ear, "Don't be afraid, I'm here to kill you." Just after he finished speaking, he saw the short young man rushing over with a fist at a very fast speed. Xiaoya was not to be outdone, and immediately stepped forward and blocked it with her slender arm. With a bang, the short young man was bounced several meters away. Then Xiaoya climbed up and suddenly grabbed one of the short young man's arms. She twisted it hard, and then heard a click. The short young man's arm twisted in an incredible way. Xiaoya, who broke the young man's arm, did not attack, but jumped back with a flash. Ma-san and others were stunned, watching Xiaoya's fight that ended quickly, and they were a little at a loss. The battle was as expected. Chu Yuntian went over and touched Xiaoya's head and said, "Let's stop here, so as not to hurt the relationship." Ma-san was stunned for a moment, then smiled miserably and said, "Haha, yes, it's true that young people are heroes. Let's go, let's talk about it in the house." After that, he waved his hand and asked another person to take the short young man away. Seeing this, Chu Yuntian just smiled indifferently. He knew that this injury was nothing for an evolver, so he said, "There's no need to go into the house. I've already said that I'm here to take Xiaoya to find 2 sets of clothes. I heard that she will come to report to Master Ma-san. Isn't it just to say hello and make a good relationship?" I hope Master Marson will take care of her in the future. Oh, really? Then little brother, go to the street and take whatever you like. Do you need me to find someone to lead the way? Marson said with a puzzled look. Master Marson is so polite. You don't need to lead the way. You are busy. We will leave now. Chu Yuntian took Xiaoya's hand and left. Marson suddenly asked, brother, please leave your name. Chu Yuntian said without turning his head. Chu Yuntian. When the two walked a little further away, another person standing behind came up and asked, Master San, what do you think? Chen Qi, you go follow them. It doesn't matter if they find you. After saying that, he turned and walked into the villa behind. The man called Chen Qi by Marson responded and chased in the direction Chu Yuntian and the others were going. It must be said that the gap between the East District and the North District is still very large. Although most of the stores have been robbed, there are still many goods in some stores selling clothes and household goods. Some poor people looking for food on the street don't seem to be very interested in these things. It seems that Marson has done a good job in this East District. At least I haven't seen many people messing around. Chu Yuntian said, and took Xiaoya into a relatively intact brand name clothing store. Watching Xiaoya excitedly looking for all kinds of clothes she liked, running to find clothes, then running into the fitting room, wearing all kinds of clothes, and swaying in front of him, Chu Yuntian sat on a sofa and enjoyed this personal fashion show. Turning his head slightly, he found that the person who had been following them was still watching there. Chu Yuntian smiled faintly and ignored him. It was already evening when they walked out of the fashion store. Xiaoya was carrying a bunch of bags. In addition to some of her own clothes and skirts, she also found 2 suitable clothes for him. Seeing that it was getting late, the two of them walked towards home. When they were about to leave the East District, Chu Yuntian suddenly stopped and said inexplicably, if you follow me again, I will take action. Then he threw out a clothing label, only to see that the label was actually inserted directly into a big tree not far away, and then said, go back and tell your master Marsan that I owe him a favor for taking away so many things here today. My cell phone number is on it. You can contact me if you have any problems. Xiaoya looked around in confusion and asked, who is the master talking to? Chu Yuntian looked at Xiaoya and said faintly, it's okay, let's go home. After that, he walked towards home without looking back. After Chu Yuntian and the other person walked away, a man slowly walked out from behind a big tree. It was the man Marson called Chen Qi. He pulled out the sign, looked at it, thought for a moment, and then walked towards Marsan's villa. Did that man really say that? Marson looked at the man called Chen Qi in confusion. The man named Chen Qi nodded and said, Master San, what do you think this man's purpose is? Marson thought for a long time before saying, I don't know, but it seems that he has no ill intentions. Chen Qi followed up and said, then what should we do? The evolution level of these two people is not low, especially that girl, who can break down Sheng's arm with just one encounter. Although I don't understand their intentions, as long as they don't hinder us, we should not provoke them. We have to do our business as soon as possible. After saying that, he waved his hand and let Chen Qi retreat. Chu Yuntian's cell phone rang just after he walked into the house. He picked it up and saw that it was an unfamiliar number. He put down the things in his hand and answered the phone. A familiar voice came from it. Brother Chu, this is Chang Wei. Brother Chang Wei? I don't know why you are calling me now. He motioned Xiaoya to go to the basement first, and he sat on the sofa in the room above. Brother Chu, I have a good thing here. I wonder if you are interested in participating? Chang Wei asked straight to the point. After thinking for a moment, Chu Yuntian said, what's the matter? Brother Chang Wei is so powerful, but he can't handle it, and needs my help. Chang Wei said directly, Brother Chu, you are joking. Let's not beat around the bush. The army has issued a task to go out of the city to find edible and easy to grow plants. If completed, the reward is energy beads or arms. Oh. Brother Chang Wei still needs to ask me for such a small matter as going out of the city to find something? Chu Yuntian asked suspiciously. Brother, you don't know, it's extremely dangerous outside the city now. I'm afraid I can't handle it alone. After all, there are some ordinary people following me. I can run away by myself when I encounter a first level beast, but those ordinary people are in trouble. Chang Wei said worriedly. Then why don't the army send troops if they have people and weapons? He still said puzzledly. Hey, brother, the army is not enough now. They are setting up defenses and building walls outside the city, and the superpower team is constantly going out of the city to hunt evolved beasts. How can they have time to take care of this matter? Chang Wei explained. Is that so? Then I can go with you to see what happens, but what do you think of the reward if it succeeds? Chu Yuntian immediately revealed a treacherous expression and said. Chang Wei thought for a moment and said sincerely, Brother Chu, I won't say less. It's 40% and 60%. You get 40% and I get 60%. I will find the plant experts, plus some of my men. Brother, you just need to help protect those ordinary people when they encounter danger. Chu Yuntian thought about it and felt that it was okay, so he said, okay, then I will go to Brother Wei tomorrow and discuss it carefully. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.